farmer's daughter. Take one. I need to be famous, Wayne. All the best people are.
There ain't nobody else out there like you.
You know why?
Why?
Because you got that X factor. Our days of struggling may soon be over.
Hollywood, here we come.
So this is it. Our own studio backlot.
You looking for a place to stay?
Oh, yes, sir.
That's one ugly son of a bitch.
And my wife, Pearl, is next door. So I would appreciate a little discretion.
He don't know what we're doing, does he?
Well, it's better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission.
Would you like to come inside?
Much obliged.
I want to be in the movie.
Well, you can't. The story can't just change midway through.
If Daddy catches us, there's no telling what he might do.
My wife is not well. It happens after dark.
Maxine? You don't want to leave, do you?
People's eyes are gonna pop out of their damn skulls when they see this.
What? Are you all right?
No.
One of the boys found this inside.
What do you think is on it?
I see one goddamn fucked up horror picture.
Hi, everyone. So this is episode 1 of Night Shift, and I've chosen special guests and a special movie that I really enjoyed. So firstly, we have Bonnie Burton, who you've probably seen me on other panels with, who is an old school blogger. We're talking 90s. I mean, what haven't you done? Author, blogger, makes amazing
I
craft.
feel like I'm the Pearl of the
Yeah,
I'm the Pearl character of this show because I'm super old.
yes, with George Lucas, like
I
That's
mean, yeah, I got a wiki page. You can look me up there.
exactly. She's got plenty of stuff. And then, of course, very special guest, the beautiful, amazing Jenna Hayes is joining us, which I'm super, super happy about. Obviously, we've got an amalgamation here of horror and this porn aesthetic. So it was the first person I thought, well, it was Jenna. I was like, amazing. Let's get Jenna on, get her point of view as well. This film, I went in with no real clue of what I was going to see. Just that it looked like an amazing slasher in the 70s. And the song in the trailer is one of my favorite songs. So I was immediately like, I'm into this. It's got Texas Chainsaw vibes. But didn't know too much else aside from the fact that it's filmed in New Zealand. And so kind of close to home. But yeah, so firstly, I thought this was a film that was incredibly, I don't know, really kind of an elevated and like very, almost this kind of newer horror that's coming out of A24, which I think are just doing amazing stuff at the moment. So I've seen a few and there's some more coming out, which I'm sure I'll end up adding to the list. But I guess, first of all, Jenna, Bonnie, what were your first thoughts when you saw this the first time?
So as a child of the 70s, I have a strong attachment to both horror films that were made in that era, but also new horror films that pay tribute and homage to that era, because it's very interesting to see, especially young filmmakers. I mean, Ty West is the screenwriter and the filmmaker of the director of this movie. He was, I think, born in the 80s, but if you're a horror fan, you can't not be a fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And even before that, I mean, there's references. Obviously, you said before, Texas Chainsaw, definitely, there's a lot of shout outs to that in this film.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's shot in New Zealand, but it takes place in rural Texas in a farmhouse.
The big house.
In a van. Like, I mean, come on. So there's a lot of shot by shot scenes where I'm like, oh, that's from Texas. But here's another thing. There's some shout outs to Psycho as well. Like the car in the water and the old, the elderly situation. And I don't know, like I'm a big fan of Ty West, so I'll see anything Ty West creates. When I was doing research on this movie, because I'm obsessed with this movie, to be honest, like I did not see it in the theaters because I live in LA and Los Angeles and COVID. Let's just say that COVID is not going away here, and I don't want to see it in the movie theater. So even though I had a press pass as an entertainment journalist, which is what I've been for most of my adult career, is you get to see it with critics, but I really wanted to see it with fans, but I don't want to get COVID. So I ended up watching it, a screener with some friends, and we did this. We did like a Zoom call when we were watching it. So that was like as closest to audience as I got. But I'm a big fan of Ty West. I mean, You're Next is one of my favorite horror films that he's done. He also did The Innkeepers, which is highly underrated. But he's done so many great, interesting horror films. And this one, when I did research on it, he wrote this not even caring if it got made. He was just like, I want to do this. And if he wrote it during COVID, I believe, and filmed it during COVID.
Correct.
I don't remember COVID's like, we're in our third year of COVID now. But anyway, I know. So like the fact that he could be creative like this during a plague is another testament to his talent. But the fact that he sent it to A24 and said, hey, if you're interested in this, let me know. I'm not sending it to anybody else. I would love for you to make it, which is interesting because he's done a lot of different types of things. And this is new. This is like a new old take, if you can kind of, it's like new vintage. And I hate using the term elevated horror because I think all horror is elevated. All horror is important. So for me to say A24 is doing some great stuff, which they are, but I also like trauma films too. So, I mean, I can't be.
I also like trash.
I love the better. But I also loved the characters, the character building in this, the surprises. Again, I saw it only twice, but the second time I saw it, I'm like, I saw a lot of things that I didn't notice the first time around, which I think happens with really good horror films, is that you have to watch
little nuggets,
little tiny little nuggets, all the little details. So, so to answer your question, sorry, that was a long answer. I really, really like this movie. And it's interesting too, because it does deal with the adult film industry, which at that time in the 1970s was very different than it was now. I mean, they didn't even have, even though this movie is called X, it's interesting because back then they didn't rate films. And a lot of, I would say a lot of pornography that you would see like in Times Square or see in theaters just before the home entertainment industry happened. So you didn't get to watch porn in the privacy of your own home. You had to go to a theater. And also a lot of, it's interesting too, because pornography at that time wasn't necessarily thought of just naughties. Like some of it was considered art films. And even like the movie Deep Throat, a lot of critics really praised that film. So I just find it interesting that we're doing this in the 70s and they have some really good discussions about the sex industry and the adult film industry in this movie and about filmmaking in general, but which is interesting because you don't see that a lot in films. And it wasn't just a TNA film. Though I will say, I'm really glad that we're doing this right now because a lot of, I did some research and when I was on YouTube and I was watching people review this movie, the women reviewing this movie is very different than dudes reviewing this movie. And women.
I watched an interview with some of the actresses, and it was like Brittany, and
well, it's not even that. Just
congratulations.
I never watched press junket stuff. Press junket stuff is painful to watch on YouTube because they just dump everything on there. So you see a lot of people who have never interviewed celebrities freak out. But the reviewers of this movie on YouTube, I think almost every single woman I saw review this, they got it. Like they understood what this was about. But all the dudes reviewing, I was like, ew, elderly sex and ew, naked. You know what I mean? And it was just like, dudes, you're not getting it. And also, they were just way into the porn side and not into the thematic, deeper, no pun intended.
Yeah, what the other dynamic.
Anyway, but that's my initial gist of this movie. Is I really loved it.
I was gonna say,
Weird. It's very
when I got to see it at the theater, as I did, it was the first movie I went to the theater to see during COVID.
Same. I actually hadn't been to a movie theater since 2016. So,
oh
wow, that's even longer than me.
So it was a treat for me to be in the theater and see it.
Yeah, and I've got to say this was the perfect movie to pick because the movie theater was almost empty except for it was just me, my housemate, and like 2 other people, and it was like amazing having the whole theater.
I went to it and I went with a friend. I actually have a very different feelings about this movie than I think you do. Bonnie. I have very mixed feelings about it. I half loved it and I half was irritated with it. I think
exactly why I wanted you to come on as well, because we've all got.
I'm very interested to hear your
takes. Because we've all got very different backgrounds and we've all been involved in certain things. Like I know, obviously, Jenna coming in as someone who's worked in porn. You know, I have friends who are sex workers. I also worked for a female-owned sex company, like doing female porn. So you know, that is and my horror love.
I was a dancer, almost burlesque. So I'm more on the Pearl end of the spectrum. But also I've had friends who were, you know, adult entertainers, but also strippers, but also sex workers. So, and also I'm a feminist, so I'm very pro sex worker.
Exactly.
Right?
That was the beauty of getting both of you on, was that I really wanted to have 2 amazingly strong women who have strong views, as I do, and all of us to chat about it, because I figured that we would all have some similar ideas and then some that are a little off. So Jenna, take it away.
So the first time I watched it in the theater, I think I liked it more than the second time. The second time I sat down and I was like, okay, I'm gonna analyze this the way that I would for one of my school papers or something, you know, because I've had to do that for school and stuff and analyze movies. And it's funny, one of the movies on your list that you sent me, I actually had to write a psychology paper about.
Amazing.
You sent me that list included Swallow, and so I wrote a paper about Swallow.
Oh, I loved Swallow.
By the way, I'm gonna leave the screen for a second. I'm pet sitting, and the dog is like, I have to go out. So I'm not leaving because I'm offended. I'm leaving because there's a dog behind me. My back. But continue.
It's okay. So I liked it more the first time, but I think that also might have just been the theater experience. I think it was a really well done film as far as like how it was shot and how it was put together and how it was acted and everything. But I did have I had a lot of frustration. I have such mixed feelings about this movie. Like I half like it because like you guys said, because of the 70s element, because it was like perfectly 70s done. Like I love that. I love like the callbacks to all the old films and stuff. They did one about The Shining when he hacks through the door. Like
exactly.
There was a lot of like signals to other movies, and I liked that. But that also made me feel like I'd already seen it before. It made me feel like I wasn't watching anything that was exceptionally original. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I feel like that a lot with horror movies lately. I'm like, okay, can you give me something I haven't seen before? Because like when he sticks his eye through the hole, like I'm like, okay, something's gonna come through it. That's so predictable.
You know it's coming.
And at the end, when she gets in the car, like, oh, like, okay, so she's gonna roll over the lady's head. Like, I just felt like a couple of the elements were a little bit predictable as far as horror movies go, and I think I like to be a little bit more like, oh my god, what the fuck did it? I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on here.
No, you're allowed to swear.
I just watched.
Swearing is encouraged. I always swear.
I have a potty mouth. So that kind of, I don't know. But then there were other things that I liked. Like I liked when she was like looking in the mirror, telling herself that she's a fucking star, because it reminded me of Boogie Nights, when he's like looking in the mirror and he's pumping himself up for the scene. So since that was one of my favorite movies before I got into porn, I liked that one. So I don't know. I just had really mixed feelings. There was a few things. I'm looking at my notes real quick.
Oh, no, I love that you all
I
took
love
notes.
that you both took notes.
I have so many notes.
6 pages of notes on this movie. So I think my biggest gripe with it, and the thing that I left being most irritated about was, and I don't want to like tear this movie apart because it's a good movie and everyone should see it. You know what I mean? But the element of the fact that they had one male performer doing 4 sex scenes in one day, that's not going to happen. Like, that's literally not going to happen. Like, by the end of it, his pop shot would just be dust. It would just be, gasp. Like, there wouldn't be anything happening.
I mean, maybe he's got some special powers, but yeah, no, that was definitely. I was like,
what? I was like, wait, there's no way. Like, in one day, too. In one day, like, I maybe 2 scenes. I could believe 2 scenes. 4 scenes in one day, 2 with the same girl, and he's still keeping it up and still rocking it. Nah, I don't know. I didn't quite believe that, and because of that, it made me wish that I feel like they didn't consult anybody in porn.
They might not have. They might not have. Yeah.
I'm like,
I was wondering that too, actually.
yeah, I think because he was going for that like 70s vibe. It was that what you're talking about, Jenna, is like I felt like it was like that kind of like stereotype, and especially like the farmer's daughter. It kind of reminded me of like, you know, the coal miner's daughter.
You know what it reminded me of Russ Meyer's Mud Honey movie, which is a farmer's daughter movie. And if you're familiar with Russ Meyer films from the 70s, they're Faster Pussycat Kill Kill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he also did a movie called Mud Honey, which is identical to this premise and this movie. This movie's porn. And it was characters, everything. So I think there's definitely, unless you aren't a Russ Meyer. I was a huge Russ Meyer fan, so I watched all those movies, and
Faster Pussycat was one of my favorites.
Very indie. I mean, he's kind of like, I would say he's the Roger Corman of exploitation movies in a way, because he does things really cheaply, but his cast is amazing. So I would highly recommend all of you go check out Mud Honey. I'm sure it's on YouTube or you can rent it somewhere, but that's what it reminded me of. But here's the thing. I don't think anyone in porn was advised on that film either.
Yeah.
I don't know, that just, it bothered me so much. And then like there's a line where like, you know, the cameraman's like saying, he's like, well, you know, I'm gonna make this like a real art film and like create this, you know? And I was just kind of, and like high quality or whatever he said, and I was like, in the 70s, all porn was shot on high def cameras because that's all there was really to shoot on. And it was, like she said, it was shown in theaters and it was art film. So I was kind of like, that's not really correct.
Yeah, and also none of them thought while they're filming, this is an art film. They just thought we're filming a film. They weren't thinking that way. Like, because
I also found it funny how that character, he was like, yeah, it's all arty. But none of the actors had actually seen what he was shooting. And if you saw what he was shooting, he wasn't really getting like the money shots and the.
No, he wasn't. It was very soft core.
All around it.
Yeah, kind of Emmanuel.
I would have liked Emmanuel movie actually finished. Like they were like, "What the fuck did you just?"
But I mean, haven't you noticed too that a lot of, I don't want to say dudes, I don't want to be totally sexist in this, but a lot of filmmakers, let's just say filmmakers, who say they're making arty movies and they only do arty movies aren't really doing arty movies. They're doing movies they want to be art, but they don't quite understand the aesthetic. It's like Film School 101, you can't break rules until you know the rules, and you can't do a film that's based on an homage if you aren't familiar with the genre, if you're not like really familiar with the genre. So
I would like to know
that comes into play in this
aspect. If he actually, I haven't seen anywhere that he actually consulted anyone or, you know, like actually even did much research in the area.
I haven't read anything about this movie. So I'm just going off my own opinions.
Yeah. And I didn't mean that about Ty. I meant that
I was just going off in
the film. Yeah, because I don't think Ty ever calls his own movies art films. I think he even, like I said earlier, he didn't even think it was going to be made. So he was just like, I just wrote this as like an homage, but also a testament about talking about a life earned, a life what was the tagline in this that they kept saying? Like, the life I
Oh yeah.
I will not accept the life I do not deserve. Or, no,
Yeah.
I,
So
yeah,
and during the plague, I think a lot of us were contemplating a lot and contemplating like, what do we want to do with our lives if we survive? And maybe that's sort of like what this movie has some underlying themes to it. But I agree with you in the fact that there were some predictable moments. But then I was wondering, well, was the pitchfork through the eyeball like a Suspiria moment? Because there is a lot of Suspiria moments in this film. And also, like, having an actor like Mia Goth, who's amazing in this film.
She's amazing. She's my favorite part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Plays two characters. She plays
Yeah.
her young
If
self.
anybody's watching this film, like watching this, and they haven't seen it, too bad. Spoilers.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
getting-
spoilers. Sorry. Spoilers.
But I did want to say, how long did it take you guys to pick up that Pearl was played by Mia?
Well, I actually knew it, I believe, because I'm not sure if I knew it before or after, but the friend I was with actually told me that it was the same character. I'm not sure if it was before or after.
I didn't realize until after I'd left the cinema.
It might have been after. It might have been after it when we were walking out. He might have said it to me, but I'm not sure. I can't quite recall.
I was trying to look back at the features, and I was like, God, that's good.
Yeah, no, they did a really good job at making the old lady really old.
And the guy was that creepy.
I loved it. By the way, I didn't notice till halfway through the movie. Like, so I didn't even know it was the same actress. So that's a testament to
well, no, neither did I. Didn't even pick it up until afterwards. And they were like, one of my friends was like, I totally picked that Mia was playing Pearl. And I was like,
I was worried it was going to turn into some sort of time travel trope. And I'm like, please don't be a time travel. Please don't be, because I fucking hate time travel movies more than anything in the world. Because they never get the world building right, and there's always too many like loopholes that don't make. There's just too many untied.
Tell me how you really feel, Bonnie. Tell me how you really feel about that.
Bonnie has very strong feelings when it comes to film.
I mean, Doctor Who's as close as I'm going to get to watching anything time travel. But when it comes to like movies, they always forget something. I mean, it's just a lot. So
no, I had a moment where I was like, oh, I hope they're not going to do some, because then obviously we all found out later that so at the same time this film was filmed, they also filmed a prequel.
Yeah. Well,
so that's
they did it back to back. They did it back.
Yeah, interesting. So, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's actually.
I literally have read nothing about this movie. I didn't want to. I just wanted to come into this like with my own like opinion things and like.
Because I became like obsessed with it, and I was like, oh god, and I was looking it up, and I found out, obviously, that they filmed it back to back at the same time, and so the prequel will follow Pearl and how they become those creepy old people. And apparently it's going to be a trilogy. So then the next one will be the sequel, and we'll follow Maxine and what happens after the whole thing. So I'm interested to see where that's going.
She's going to Porn Valley.
Yeah. Well, and where is it going to be a slasher? Is it going to be horror at all? Is it going to, you know?
Well, if it's Pearl, she was a dancer, and it would have been in the 1920s.
Yeah.
Which is a very interesting time. I just watched a couple of documentaries about the 1920s and 1930s about how a lot of the dancers in movies, unfortunately, they were Weinsteined pretty hardcore. I mean, they were basically casting couch. So if you wanted to get in those movies, you had to have sex with the director and producer. You did not, or the studio head. You didn't get a choice. So now when I watch those movies, I'm like, all those women were sexually assaulted for this role. So when you look at those things now, and also when you look at the history of Marilyn Monroe and everything she went through, and a lot of those actresses of the time and dancers of the time. So I bet you Pearl's going to cover that quite a bit. But I'm curious to know what Pearl was like at Maxine's. Is it Maxine? No, yeah, Maxine's age. Because it's going to be different. Because it's going to be roaring 20s, maybe some prohibition if it's the 30s. So
and then I guess that what they're going to lead into is the fact that, you know, all those cars that are in the lake. So how many? So how many people? How many people died because of because she was horny?
No, I mean. I mean, speaking of horny, another part that I thought that I wasn't quite believable, and then I'm gonna get to the parts that I really liked. Okay, okay. So another part that I thought wasn't really that believable is when little church mouse, who's played by, I believe that's Jenna Ortega. I really like her.
I love her too.
She's awesome. She's really great. So they shoot the scene, and then they're all hanging around smoking, and they sing Landslide, and then have a conversation about porn, and then suddenly she's just like, oh yeah, I want to do porn.
Yeah,
I want to do
that's
it.
what was a bit weird. But you know, in that scene, you probably got a good idea. You've probably seen this happen in real life. But the one thing I like, that bit I didn't find that believable. But what I did find believable as hell was when her boyfriend was like, no.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%.
And he was like, why not? And he's like, no. And then when he goes outside and he's like, she's not like them.
Well, this is the weird thing, right? Because he does.
But that enters. That's where the sexism enters, because then the other guy says something like says something about. I wrote it down too. He said something about how they're all.
Yeah, he says something along the lines of. Yeah,
he's like, they're all. None of them are good, or something like that. They're all bad girls.
Well,
I was like,
let me break it to you. None of them are all good, or something like that.
Yes, I find it in my notes.
It was also interesting too, because he was in the beginning, though. He was all, this is art. This is, I'm proud of my work. This is all, that you all should be proud of this, blah, blah. This is, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Like, he basically is giving the whole, like, dude as a feminist speech. Like, the dude feminist speech that they all give.
Yeah,
Well, their own girlfriend wants to do it. Then the machismo comes out, and they're like, no. She's my girl. I don't want anyone with her. She's mine and only. It's that weird possessiveness, but also hypocrite.
I've seen this with, like, my friends who work in sex work, that when they first get with the guy, they love it.
They're super excited about it. Super excited. And then as soon as they fall in love with you, they start becoming possessive, and they start
like, no, you need to
this
stop.
is the story of my life. This is the story of my entire day.
Exactly. Why I wanted to say about that scene, that it's so I've seen it play out with so many of my friends.
For sure. And that part was very, very authentic. Another reference, before I forget, another reference that they made was there was a Harry Met Sally one too.
Oh yeah.
Faking the orgasm, and I was like, there's a Harry Met Sally.
I know, right? Which you don't always see in a horror film.
No, I really liked that part, actually.
Yeah, and even when she's Brittany Stowe's character is in bed, and he's like standing, Kid Cutie standing up, being all like, I'm a man, like he's so happy with himself. And she's like,
no.
Like, no. And she's like, no, you're not that great. And then she just starts doing like all the acting, and then he's just like I love that part. But yeah, I think, like you said, the Jenny's character, like, just so openly and willing to like jump into the porn so quickly, I think on day one, pretty much.
And with her, there's the religious undertones, right? Because she's got her cross, she's got her Sunday panties on, she's the church mouse, right? There's a lot of actually religious undertones in this movie.
And
at the very beginning, there's the guy on the screen, and he's like, he may be a forgiving God, but he can only, and I feel like that's kind of like they're foreshadowing into the fact that these people are going to be called sinners. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Also, that's very
big nugget. So that is Maxine's father.
Yeah. So at the end, you see her.
You see at the very end when the
photo.
Room.
Yeah, it goes back to it.
Yeah, and then he goes, and my daughter was taken away from me, blah blah, and then he shows a picture, and he's Maxine.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, so that's you have to stay for end credits now. Have Marvel movies taught you anything?
I know, but I just. You know what the thing is that I have a very small bladder, so sitting in a theater for that long to watch a movie.
No, I wasn't. By the way, I'm not going to shame.
Oh no!
It was quite quick, and like
I missed that.
But the line if you ever watch it again, you'll see at the end when they're like walking around, the cops just looking at stuff that's playing on the television, and then
Yeah.
He's saying, you know, I lost my daughter, blah blah blah, and then shows a picture of her and the name Maxine, and then he also says, "I will not accept a life I do not deserve," and that's one of his lines.
I didn't connect that.
But
See?
also
Yeah.
when she drives
When
away,
she
after
says it, like,
killing-
she says that, like, you know, when she attacks the older lady, and then when she's driving away, she says it again.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that's going to be, we're going to see something to do with the religious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In
Like, there
her
was a lot of religious stuff, and like a lot of the message that I got was that these religious undertones and stuff were basically directed at kind of saying that, you know, people in porn are sinners, and you know, people who are sex workers are sinners, and if you have sex, you're a sinner. But it's just interesting because the old lady slut shames the girl in the thing. Actually, she totally slut shames her, but yet she's this horny bitch.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hypocrite much? And it's interesting because they're watching religious stuff, which a lot of religious people can be the biggest hypocrites, right?
I think that they were trying to play like you know, like Texas Chainsaw. They were trying to pretend it was Middle America, like Texas.
Yeah.
Whereas that kind of stuff didn't really play on television in New Zealand. Like,
in Texas,
we don't have that stuff.
I mean, I
So,
grew up
like,
in the Midwest, and they played that stuff on. The only things, okay, so
even on the radio, like we
Here's the thing,
New Zealand never had any of that stuff. So
you don't have choice back then. So if
Yeah.
you were in the Midwest, well, I grew up in Kansas. So if you were in the Midwest with or the South, and it's like the 1970s, you have 3 channels, just 3, and usually one of them was religious, and it played religious stuff. It played TV evangelist stuff, both local and national, all the time. And same with radio stations. We didn't have satellites yet. So it was all like whatever local radio stations were playing. And if you were in the Bible Belt, which is a certain part of the United States, which includes Texas, that is a lot of religious programming. And so it wouldn't be unheard of to see that stuff. But also, they are in a rural house on a farm. They are probably raised with that. And that's probably all they preach and all they're into. But you're right. There is a certain kind of hypocrisy with that, and also a duality with that. So if Pearl was a dancer in the 1920s and 30s, she probably rebelled against religion. But then when she married the dude that is very not flamboyant, and he went to 2 wars, he's in World War I and II, he loves her and wants to do anything for her. But he is also very not like her. Like, he's not into sex. And I also, you know, I have to remember things break down when you get at that age. So he probably, there's no Viagra yet. So he is probably just doing his best. But for women, it's been well documented that women have hardcore sex drives all the way until they drop dead.
It gets more intense as you get older, man.
Even one of the things that I loved about this film is that even though, you know, they're elderly, and most people, including myself, don't really want to think about really old people having sex, but they do. And they do. And one of the things that I read online was really funny, and it said something along the lines of, you know, you think she's just angry because they're having sex and whatnot, and then no, she wants to be in on it.
Yeah, that's why he warns them at the beginning. That, stay away from my wife. It's not because he thinks the wife will be offended. It's because she's going to get turned on, and she's dangerous when she's turned on.
Dude, she's got a dude in her basement.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Like,
did you guys think, because I completely did, because his pants are down to his ankles, she was sucking him off when he was like,
I think there was some sex stuff happening. There's
wait, I missed that. I couldn't hear that.
Like, he's strung up, like, you know, like on the thing, right? And his jeans are pulled right down to his ankles, and his dick's just hanging. And I swear to God, I was like, first thing that popped in my head was, she's been sucking that dick.
I don't think she's been I think she's been having sex with it, because you
that too.
And
like,
make it so hard.
Even
Did you not see what was around him though? Did you not see?
Oh yeah, there's stuff.
There's stuff.
And then, like, when she even kills him, she straddles him, and it's almost like she's sitting on his flaccid dick.
Yeah.
And she's going, when she's stabbing him, it's like she's, you know what I mean?
Thrusting. It's thrusting.
Yeah. It's like a dog humping the, you know, when you see a dog just humping the air, it's kind of like what he's doing. And so like I found that really funny. And even like his reaction was quite like, I was like, I would have been way far away from her by then, but she touched his dick and he was still being nice to her. Like, you know, and
you mean when he drives up to her?
And she's like,
that's a different guy. Different guy.
Yeah, she kisses, you know,
that's
the
problem. That's the problem. A lot of people treat the elderly as very fragile and docile, and they can't hurt anyone. That's why it makes them so fascinating to be killers in horror films, because they can also, I don't know if you know this, but when you are suffering from dementia, you have almost superhuman strength. So you can actually be very, you can pick someone up and really hurt them.
Because I was wondering, she's a tough bitch.
But also like they do talk about sundowning a little bit in this, and I don't know if they talk about dementia, but there are some dementia elements. The problem with this is that this movie it's right on the cusp of being exploitive of the elderly, because when you're young, sometimes you look
Thank you. I was about to go into the ageism and everything too.
This is a good segue. So I'll just give my little 2 cents and you can come in. But I literally am just like, now that I am on getting older, I am like, oh shit, now I'm the scary old lady.
But, I'm like, oh God,
like young guys.
Like, no, you can't have sex.
Well, no, it's the thing is that a lot of horror films that have elderly in it, they're either very much a victim, or they're very much like creepy, or they're creepy just for being old. I think I wrote down, it's like The Taking of Deborah Logan. I don't know if you've seen that, but it starts off as like a found footage movie of a documentary crew filming this old lady because she's suffering from dementia, and they want to do a documentary. And then I won't give away the ending if you haven't seen it, but the ending's very surprising, and you're like, holy shit, that's not what I thought. But throughout the whole movie, you're like, this feels exploitive. And even Hereditary on some level felt a little exploitive of the elderly. The Visit, I mean, and this movie has also been compared to The Visit quite a bit. I don't know, like now that I'm getting into I turned 50 this year. So I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to be that scary old lady.
Oh shit. Happy birthday.
At the same time, I'm starting to look at horror films differently that have the elderly or the elderly depicted. And yes, you know, we look at Psycho, even though that's not technically elderly, that's something else. But you look at these movies that have older characters, even Suspiria.
These are old, right? They're like at least 80 or 90.
Yeah, and it's
old. They're not just elderly, they are about to drop.
No, it's also like cronism, you know, the whole old lady in the woods kind of metaphor too. Yeah. So I definitely thought it was interesting. If you ever want to see,
there was definitely a mother maiden crone type element in this movie for sure.
Yeah, and also if you want to see it, by the way, just side note.
Oh, there's a dog.
Okay. There's a dog in there. If you want to see an elderly sex scene done right, rent Cocoon. It's a movie from like the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just like, it's got Wilford Brimley being, you know, sexy. But I will say, when you see this in this film, and Hereditary took me for and Suspiria too, the remake as well. When you see old people orgy, that's not something I'm into. But I respect it, and I respect the fact that they're showing this. But I always wondered, the younger the filmmaker, how they depict that. Like if Clint Eastwood ever did a horror film with elderly sex, I bet you would be a lot different than if it was Jordan Peele. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like there's gonna be. So anyway, that was I'm glad we were going to bring up ageism, because I did want to talk about that a little bit, because it does show up quite a bit in this movie.
Well, yeah, that was a big element. I wrote down a few times. I was like, ageism, it's all through this whole movie. Like, you know, since I've been to school and now that I have a minor in gender and women's studies, and I almost double majored in it, I view things a lot differently than I used to, because I've studied misogyny, I've studied sexism, I've studied ageism, ableism, all of that stuff. Like, so now I see the world differently. If I watched this movie 10 years ago, I would have probably had a completely different opinion of it. I would have just enjoyed it like mindlessly and not even like
thought about it.
And now I watch things and I'm like, oh, that's a sexist comment. Oh, that's, you know, misogynistic. But that's a feminist element. Like that's how I get now when I watch stuff. So
I felt like very uncomfortable at certain bits of it when, like, the idea of like women, becoming eventually becoming invisible and becoming unnecessary, and like that whole, and they kept flipping back between the young, beautiful, fresh, special, and then the older lady who's no longer valued in society at all. And her Pearl's way of expressing to her husband, like, and trying so hard and putting on her makeup and and him just being like, I can't. Like, it just, I feel like it was just that kind of attitude where I feel like, and then they get, obviously maybe not these guys because they're that old, but that's that, like, when the guy goes off then and has an affair, you know what I mean? It's like the woman has now lost any worth once she hits a certain age. And it actually started to make me feel uncomfortable. Like Bonnie was saying, I'm turning 50. I'm only turning 42 this year. But even I, like, am starting to feel like around millennials and things, I'm starting to feel like, oh, I'm like the old person now. Like, like, and you'll be around them. And I'm thinking, oh, am I hitting that invisible, like, level where I'm no longer seen in a sexual way, but like I'm just kind of there, and I feel like there's a bit of that with Pearl where it's like she's just like, it's like she's just been dumped. There's nothing left for her according to society. It's like,
and that's pretty much what I wrote. I wrote, like, old people aren't supposed to want or have sex anymore according to society. Like, society's like, we don't want to see that. We don't want to think about it. But they're still human beings. They still have, like, old people still have, sexual feelings, especially, like we were just saying, women, because our sex drive keeps going up and up. And like, I felt like that was a really good message of the movie, where it was like, hey, we need to, even though it was exploitative a little bit of the elderly, it also kind of gave you the message of like, hey, like, we kind of treat our elderly like shit. Like, once they reach a certain age, we just write them off and send them off to the old home, the home, and they're not, and they're supposed to play checkers for the rest of their life. They're never supposed to want to diddle themselves or anything,
We change our ways and become Midsummer and just push them off a cliff.
Oh, that's my favorite movie. Okay, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
As long as it's consensual cliff pushing, I'm okay with it. But I this movie was so weird to me because I kept thinking, because I always have the feminist, like, viewer on as well. Like, what if the characters had switched? What if it was the old guy that kept trying to have sex with everyone and not the woman?
Good point.
That would have been, like, interesting too, because I live in LA where that is standard. That is standard to see.
I mean, I think that's really I really like. I actually liked that it was the female who was wanting the sex.
Oh, absolutely.
And I knew, like, obviously I knew the films, but never put together that it was Ty West. And so when I first watched this, I had no idea that Ty West was a male. And at the end of the film, both me and my housemate looked at each other, and I was like, I'm so surprised that was written by a male. There was
have you not seen his other movies? Because his other movies have very strong female leads.
I have, but I just never with the name, right? So I was just thinking, like, oh, and I was like, I'm actually kind of like, with some of the feminist stuff, and obviously there's also the sexist stuff in there, but I felt like more so than anything that it felt like it was pushing these norms and stereotypes and all of these things. Part of me thought it was written by a woman. And then I was actually shocked to discover it's just written by a dude. And I was like, okay, that's cool, because I've never seen a dude think about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, like, without, I guess, being really crass or like, whatever. Like,
well, I think it just depends on what your background is. Like, I would say David Lynch gets it. If you look at David Lynch movies, the older people have just as vibrant sex and love lives as the younger people. But all of his movies, like in Twin Peaks, everything. But I also
I've never seen Twin Peaks.
You haven't?
No, I need to watch it. I know.
I'm not gonna shame you. I'm just excited. And we have to like
Bonnie's obsessed.
the three of us have to reconvene for a show after you've seen it because I think we
Okay.
should discuss it.
So everybody keeps telling me I'm gonna love it, and nobody can believe I haven't seen it yet. But I also haven't watched The Godfather, so
There's so many movies I haven't seen that people like.
You know, I watched The Godfather a long time ago. It's not really
it's not my kind of movie. So
not my kind of movie either. I'm not
There's
a
a lot of movies.
Twin
There's a
Peaks
lot
I
of
want to
movies
watch.
out
Twin
there.
Peaks I'm
I'm
interested.
not a mafia type mob
Yeah, me neither. I'm not into it.
person. Like I don't really.
Can we switch gears a little and talk about the death scenes because there were some good ones.
Oh, there were some good ones. Yeah. So
Go ahead.
I loved one bit that I actually loved, and it did shock me, kind of, which I loved, was when Church Mouse like is running out and then she just goes boom and like is shot and goes flying. I thought that was cool. I thought that was.
I love the alligator scene. Here's the thing: we knew that alligator scene was going to happen.
Oh yeah, that was utterly predictable.
No, it's really predictable because it's on a mural painted on the side of the Bayou Burlesque place that they leave. So if you watch,
I didn't notice that. You are such a detailed person. I love you.
Like, if you like pause it, there's a scene where an alligator is attacking a very buxom blonde girl who looks like Brittany Snow's character.
It's on the side of the building.
He's taking off her clothes. So he's like ripping off her, because it's a burlesque place, so of course it's that. But I was
as they're leaving, coming out, Jenna, like when they're walking to the van, you see it then.
And the reason I paid attention,
I remember that shot. I don't know.
Okay, so not everyone's gonna notice it. The reason I paid attention is Midsummer, as I mentioned before, all the murals in Midsummer tell you what's
going on. Yeah.
And so because of that movie, I pay attention to murals now.
It's so good. I'm sorry, I don't mean to digress from this movie, but that movie is so good. And I just saw a movie the other day, and it's my new favorite movie, and I'm so excited about it. And it's
you just saw it? Oh,
no,
okay.
no, not Midsummer. Midsummer I've seen like 10 times.
What did you just see?
I just saw that movie Men.
I have.
Oh my God. I am so in love with it.
Let's reconvene for Men.
Yeah, we'll reconvene for that one. That was good.
Okay, good, because I got a lot to say about that one too.
But I just got given it's released here in like I think on the 17th. So I just got given 4 tickets to go see that.
I loved it. That's all.
So I like the death scenes. I will say as a horror fan, I even like the predictable ones just because I like a good head crushing scene. I like a good.
Well, they were definitely well done. They were the kill scenes were incredibly well done, of course.
I do love like a pitchfork going through. I mean, you can't really do it with a pitchfork because there's too many prongs. So I don't know how they did it, but something going through a
because it had 3 prongs. I did wonder that because it was only
2 holes.
Yeah, I didn't know it would be. This is a farm kid who's used many a pitchfork. I know that's not possible. But I do like a good pitchfork death. I like a good like jabbing of the eyeball death. Yeah. I do love that they did the thing where when Pearl shoots the rifle, she goes flying because guess what? That's what happens when you're like 80 pounds and you shoot.
It would be so fragile as well.
Yeah. You got to be sturdy to shoot a shotgun. I know that a little bit well.
Everyone in a weird way, like everyone was like, oh, you know, it was so super scary on certain bits and certain. You know, the bit that made me and I love this about.
There's only one thing about it I found scary. The only one thing about the whole movie.
And if it's the same bit, then I'm gonna scream because me and my housemate literally grabbed each other's arms and were going, no, please, no. And it was when the old lady gets in bed with Maxine. And I was like, no, come on.
I thought that was sad instead of
it was sad. I think it was
so sad. But at the same, that's why I felt so like
I
was like,
love that she was bisexual representation.
Yes, I like that too.
Yeah, but it was like
it was very there was
a
lot of
it was done was so like
well, her hands were bloody. Her hands were bloody too.
Yeah. And it was like that was the out of all like, you know, horror doesn't make me that uncomfortable, but that scene, like not because of the bisexuality or anything, it was the uncomfortableness of
having someone non-consensually touch you while you're sleeping, like
and really like, you know, that kind of thing, but also I didn't even think about, I guess, the bisexuality. I think she was just actually enthralled and in love with that. She wanted to be
The
inside.
youngness
Well,
of
she
her,
wanted
yeah.
to be her. Pearl wanted to
Exactly.
be Maxine
And
because you see
that's
a
what it was
scene when
kind of,
Pearl's having sex. I'm sorry, when Maxine's having sex, that Pearl's watching and she envisions
yeah.
herself as that. And they also have similarities. So in a way, either it was she was lonely or she was attracted or she was touching her because she wanted to be her. So there's like different elements of that. But
Different
yes,
elements,
I agree.
yeah.
It was scary. It was scary.
So for me, the only, I mean,
I was just like, no, yes, no, yes. Oh, he's doing it. He's doing it. And I was like, oh, right. I've never seen anything like that in a horror film. Like,
so I feel, I don't know. I feel like for me, the only scary thing about it was just an all-encompassing, like, feeling that getting old in society is terrifying. That's what scared me. None of the like death scenes, nothing of the story really scared me, except for the element of that, oh my God, getting old in our society, especially as a woman, is fucking terrifying.
yeah,
And
well, that's me and my female
I
housemate.
left the theater and I was like, I better have all the sex I can have right now. Because I don't know. What if I get old? What if I get old and nobody wants to have sex with me?
No. That's not true.
That's exactly how it made you feel, though. And I agree with you. That was one of the bits that resonated and made me, like, terrified me. It was like, yeah, like both me and my female housemate left going, like, we both just stared at each other like, well, shit, we haven't got long to go.
Yeah, I know. I just turned 40 a couple months ago. I just turned 40 a couple months ago, and I'm like, no, I've got how many more years till I get there? Oh shit, it's going fast.
Yeah, and I started to think about, like, you know, and reevaluate myself, like, oh, you know, what, you know, like that whole idea of starting to feel, like I said, like invisible and starting to fade off, you know, and all these little millennials, and you know, you go to the pub and suddenly you become like just a part of the furniture, and everyone's like, ooh, and I was like,
it's even more sad because it's like you get old and you want to have sex, but you may not physically even be able to do it, even though you want to do it. And that to me sounds like torture. To be like a horny person, but not be able to get it up, or not be able, like, oh my, or not be able to orgasm or anything because you're old and your body's old, and like, oh.
When they do.
I think we have to be careful about this, because also the reason, it's hard to explain, but I feel like Hollywood doesn't show those relationships. So we are already conditioned into believing it doesn't happen, which it does. It does happen.
It does, and that's one of the reasons, that's one of the things I liked about this movie, is that it did show that old people want sex and that old people do have sex. And I like the fact that it like challenged that societal perception that old people are just done and put them in a box.
Well, I mean, if you watch something,
and it's like, oh no, we just like, we wear really long nighties and like prison pajamas and like never ever.
I'm gonna be 100 years old wearing like agent provocateur lingerie. Like, I don't even care.
I think we have to like remember movies like The Graduate. We have to remember movies like Something's Gotta Give. We have to remind ourselves of there. And you know what's interesting? In the 1970s, there were a lot more movies that showed elderly women with young men. And
you didn't see elderly with elderly, you know, a lot.
But that's because the market wasn't there. And I think the older the market is, the more you'll start seeing that stuff. But also I think indie film does that a lot more. I think also not mainstream. I'm not talking like mainstream movies. Mainstream movies have, none of us are going to see ourselves in that. We just won't. But we will in indies. We will in horror. We will see in foreign films, because they're a bit more, you know, not abstract, but more inclusive. And so you'll see that. And also I think if, you know, I mean, it is Pride Month, so fuck it, I'm bringing it up. Lesbians, let me tell you, elderly lesbians, they get plenty of fucking action. They get action with the same age. They get action with older and younger. And also, I think that's something that hopefully we'll see more and more in cinema, because you definitely see with gay boys. You definitely see older men and younger men in gay films.
True,
that
very
love gay
true.
boys. That is that genre in itself. And so I think you'll start seeing that more and more with lesbian movies and lesbian couples, but also bisexual, pansexual. I think you're going to see it more with trans community. I think you will also see it, ironically enough, in the asexual community, because they're not represented ever. And that is something that, like, the older you get, like I am pansexual, that's what I identify as, but realistically I'm lazy sexual, because I don't any work. I don't want to have to go on websites. I don't want to have to use Tinder. I don't want to have to, like, I don't want to have to do the work, but at the same time, all my relationships since COVID have been Postmates or Amazon delivery people. Like, I just pretend we're in a relationship. Because, I mean, there's some flirting that happens when they drop off my food or they drop off packages. And so there's like a little bit of flirtation. I count that as speed dating. And that's how I'm like, that's just how I am, because it's not like I don't want to be with someone. It's just a lot of work. And also, the older you get, it's not that your sex drive goes down. It's that the work you have to put into attracting someone goes down. And that is the thing. It's true. Like, if you talk to anyone who works, if you talk to anyone who works at a home, or anyone that works at an elderly, like, apartment center or something, those people are having sex. My mom is not. I don't know if my mom is, but my mom is in an elderly place. I did not ask her on our weekend calls, but like, she's like, gonorrhea was going around the elderly house because they were having sex with each other and they were not using protection and not being, smart about it.
Oh my goodness.
And it was like, old people have sex all the time. So, like, just because we don't see it in movies and TV doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means like younger, like, I would say Something's Gotta Give is perfect because it's Diane Keaton with a young, not super young, but youngish Keanu Reeves as her love interest. And I love that because he really genuinely is in love with her.
Yeah, that is a sweet movie. I gotta say.
So I think if there's more movies like that, but also I do think it's up to screenwriters being more diverse and directors being more diverse, and not just being like the usual crew of young people, but also not the usual crew of straight guys. So I think as long as you have more and more representation, also a lot of people of color, there's a lot of age differences between males and females when it's the older women with younger men. Like, Stella Got Her Groove Back is a great representation of that. And so you have to, like, I almost feel like I wish I should just do a podcast that no one's going to watch on elder men get their groove on. Because
I really love those films with the dynamics between the young and old. But I feel like I want to see more films of people around the same age, like
with each other,
my age. Yeah, because I feel like, it's almost
your age or just older?
Like fetishized that, like, you have this older woman with a young man, like a really young guy, or you have an older guy who ends up, with his student, or like whatever it may be. Like, I feel like it's getting a little tired. I love.
I mean, it's been around since Lolita. I mean,
exactly. And I mean,
it's not like it's a new thing. I just want more.
And that's my point. It's like that, but it's not.
Well, Something's Gotta Give was about Diane Keaton trying to get with Jack Nicholson,
which I loved. Jack Nicholson, she got with Jack Nicholson, so that was good. Yeah, that's what I loved about that film. But, like, I feel like there's, I want to see a bit more, like, innovation.
I feel like it depends on the era. Because there was an era in the late 80s, early 90s of a lot of those movies. I think Bridges Over Madison County is a great example of that, with Meryl Streep and what's his toes? I can't remember. But it's just like, those were older couples, right? So, like, that was a thing. But unfortunately, as we know, the industry has changed to the point, and I'm not even talking about COVID and being quarantined, but most older people, like my parents, don't go to a movie theater. They will rent it from Amazon or direct, same time release or whatever, because home entertainment systems have gotten better and better and better and better. And going to a movie, you have to have a certain level of patience with everyone around you, that they're not talking on their phone during the movie, that they're not being obnoxious during the movie. So you have to have a level of patience around strangers, but also the fact that you don't have control. So like you were mentioning bladder issues, you can't pause it and then go to the bathroom and then come back and watch the ending. Like
it's not that, hold on, just to clarify, because I have fans watching this, it's not that I like really have bladder issues. I drink a ton of water. I guess
mean, there's
I drink
nothing
a ton of
wrong.
water. And so I always have
I always get a giant drink.
Because I don't watch your, like, I haven't watched any of your like stuff, so I don't want to like assume, but I'm not shaming about piss play or anything. So that's not.
Oh, I don't do that. I never did that.
No, but anyone who's watching that's into that, I am not. I don't shame anything.
No,
so
whatever your thing is your thing.
But I have a camel bladder, but I'm also dehydrated 90% of my life. So I am not a good representation of when you should pee during a movie. So there used to be this great website that would tell you of upcoming movies.
When you could leave.
So when it was a good time to pee and you just run and pee.
Okay, so this is a good segue. What would have been a good time to pee during this movie?
Oh, God.
I don't know. The first half was really slow.
It was, yeah. And that's
slow build up to get the horse started.
You could probably duck out during that bit and come back and you wouldn't have really lost.
Because when does the violence start happening? More than halfway through, right?
Yeah, about 40 minutes or so.
The first half of the movie is all bright and sunny and everything, and then the second half is just dark and it's like a complete juxtaposition of lighting and images. You know, like the first half is just like super bright and everything's like a lot more happy, and then the second half is just like completely dark and bloody and everything. I wanted to ask you guys if you guys noticed something that I noticed. When he goes into the barn and he steps on the thing, he steps on the nail, right? And it's dark. He doesn't see the nail. But then when he goes down to take it out of his foot, there's a light there on the ground.
Yes.
Where the hell did that light come from?
I'll tell you, as someone who stepped on many. Oh, go ahead, Renee. I'm sorry.
Drop it?
What, Renee?
Did he have a torch and then he dropped it before he hit the nail?
Is that what happened?
I think.
Well, they make a joke in the movie that there's one flashlight.
Yeah.
All of them. So I
think, then that must have been something I missed too, because I was like, because it was just really dark when he stepped on it, and then all of a sudden it was bright, and I was like, where did the light all of a sudden come from?
I will say,
there's always little like. What do they call them?
I'm always trying to find continuity errors. So
yeah, what's the word, Bonnie? There's a name for it, like
for stepping on nails.
No, no, for when things like don't, like not spoilers, but like
it's
the little fuck ups.
I just call it continuity errors.
Yeah. If you look up this, so if you look up this movie on IMDb.com and go to the goofs section, there's some goofs there for sure. That's continuity. That's like having some. I mean, I don't want to blame the script coordinator, but there's continuity issues with even the most magnificent movies. So
at the beginning, the cops come and they find the bodies, and they drive up. The bodies are already tarped over. Who tarped over the bodies?
Yeah, they're tarped over already.
Everybody already left. Like everyone's dead, and then the girl left. So she didn't go back and tarp over the body.
Okay, so that's a thing that happens in detective stuff. Sometimes it's especially in the 1970s before they had like securing. I know way too much, by the way, of murder history and homicide.
Oh yeah, Bonnie writes for Hunter Killer, by the way.
Oh yeah, so I write murders for Hunter Killer, so I can never kill now in real life. I would be suspect number one.
Who knows if we ever need to know how to do something.
So I write elaborate murder mysteries for Hunter Killer games where I come up with different ways to kill people and how to get away with it and all that. By the way, I'm a joy to have if you ever pick me up as a Lyft or an Uber driver, because I will go in great detail of how you can get rid of bodies before I realize.
Oh my goodness!
Anyway, with older not being able to secure a crime scene, sometimes people who discover the bodies before they call the cops will put stuff over them, especially if they're.
I just kind of assumed that like one detective got there first.
Well,
I didn't even think about it. Really.
I don't know. I thought about it.
Like also a nearby neighbor, and farm life nearby is usually 10 miles away. But they could, they could have like checked on them. If they're elderly and they're part of the church, there's a good chance that someone from the church checks in on them once a week to make sure they're still alive. That's a thing in the South that happens. So it could have been, I mean, we don't know because it's off script, but
I think
that's a good catch though. That's a very good catch because it's like, who did that? But usually murderers don't care about the sanctity and dignity of life.
No, that's what I'm saying. And she drove off. She was gone.
She did drag in one of the bodies so it could be self-defense. So she didn't just leave all the bodies there. But yeah, I don't know, like, would you? Like, if I was being attacked by a bunch of people and then I killed some and then I'm leaving, I wouldn't be like, oh, should I bury them? Oh, should I put them? It's like there's this great scene in
hitting the gas like straight.
Yeah, I mean, there's this great movie called Ritual, which I highly recommend. It's called The Ritual. It's on Netflix. It's a folk horror show movie. But one of the characters gets killed. I won't spoil it for you if you haven't seen it. But
I haven't seen it, so don't.
We're being hunted, right, by a creature they don't know. They don't know who's killing them. It could be an animal, it could be a person, it could be something paranormal. But one of them goes, well, we can't leave them like this. We have to bury them. If something is after you, you don't bury it. You leave because it doesn't matter. And I've buried things, like not bodies. I should be a little more clear here. If you bury, like, let's say a dead pet or something that's decomposing, like if you come across roadkill and you're like, oh, I need to bury this, coyotes will get into it very easily. So you have to really dig deep. Like I would say 8 feet, not even 6 feet, like 8 to 9 feet.
You're not sticking around for that.
Yeah, and most people are not you don't carry a shovel with you when you're hiking or when you're in I just feel like there's not time to do the burial and all that stuff. So putting a sheet over 8 people in total or 7, 5, I don't remember. Maths are not my specialty. But anyway, if you murder a bunch of people or if a bunch of people are killed, that's a lot of linen. Like I don't
Yeah, that's a lot of linen. Yeah, you gotta go. Yeah, no.
I know that maybe makes me sound horrible, but I'm just like, if something's after me, like that's why I feel like a lot of those horror film spoofs, especially Scream, right, or a cabin in the woods, they're like, they really talk about like, don't go in the basement. Like, there's so many movie moments in this.
Why do you go in the basement? Why do you go upstairs? Run out of the house.
My favorite part of watching horror movies is yelling and screaming at the thing. We have like this game within my house where we watch old horrors and we scream out every time there's bad and white underwear, and it'll be like white underwear, bad sex, and we scream out and it's just like, because it's so like it just constantly is just the funniest tropes, and like you'll be like, it's like, oh, this thing's happening. No, I'm going to go and check it out. No, you don't. No.
You don't split up. You don't have sex in a film because you're going to get killed. I mean, this shows that. But they also didn't. I'm very glad that the virgin was not the final girl. I'm glad that it was just someone that was a normal girl was the final girl. So that
was predictable that she was going to be the final girl, though. It was just.
I know it was.
I knew it from the beginning.
I only thought she's going to be the final girl because she's playing 2 characters and we're probably going to get another movie. So that's why I was like, okay. But I do like, I don't know, like part of me really hates those tropes of like, don't go in the basement. Don't go out with a flashlight that doesn't work.
I hate them as much as I love them.
I love them too. Like part of me is like, well, but I know in real life, I don't even go in the basement when it's like.
I feel like in real life, if we were as trapped in a horror, like and something happened, we would be like, slay it, because we'd be like, fucking ain't going no there. Like, it's just like,
well, there is
I'm ready for this situation in real life.
there is a great horror comedy called Final Girl, where a girl is trapped in a movie where her mom is the actress playing a final girl, but real people are getting killed in the movie, so they're trying to survive by not following those tropes.
The tropes,
but it's so hard. I mean, I don't know. I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, so I grew up with horror movies. So for me, those tropes are also kind of comforting in a way, because it's like, oh, I know where this is going. And then I don't want something totally left field, but then sometimes I do. Like, I know you mentioned that earlier, Jenna, where you're like,
I want something that I'm like, what the hell is this?
When I watched Hereditary and, the guy drives and her head goes flying, I'm like, fucking A. Like,
Yeah,
I
it
was
was
like,
awesome.
this is
Early
amazing.
on. Early
Well,
on. That's not like towards the end of the movie. That's like
Yeah.
that's early. And I was like,
Yeah.
but
I was
even
like, oh,
Midsummer,
we're in for a ride now. I was
but
like,
Midsummer,
this
as
is gonna
much
be
as
good.
I love folk horror and I'm a big fan of Wicker Man and all of those movies,
Oh, yeah.
I would say, like, when I watched Midsummer, I'm like, wait, why are they? Oh no, they're on the cliff. They're on the cliff. What's good? Like, there's things that, but also the bear caught the bear thing.
Oh, I love that movie.
Even there are murals telling us what's gonna happen. There were so many, but also Cabin in the Woods is a great example of that too, where you're like halfway through the movie, you're like, what the hell just happened? And I love movies, any kind of movie. I don't even care if it's a rom-com or if it's a drama or if it's something unexpected and entertaining. I chef kiss it. Like, I applaud.
Yeah.
But with horror, it's getting harder and harder to do that. However, I feel like with more representation, with more different types of people from different types of backgrounds writing horror films and directing horror films, we will start seeing some more unexpected twists and turns, because it's not just the same old thing being rehashed and homaged to death.
Yeah.
So I do think there were elements of that in here, but also there was a lot of homages. There are a lot of homages in there.
Oh, yeah. It was like it was almost like it was a fun movie. Like, he was doing it for fun and kind of went, oh, let's make it a film now.
Yeah.
Like, kind of thing. But, you know, it was very much, like you said, an ode to so many films.
So it's like one of the things that you said, somebody said something about stereotypes or tropes, right? There were a couple in here that I was a little disappointed with.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, there was the porn star who's a cocaine user, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, like, come on.
I mean, I
made me
don't like it
Of course she's
Pearl.
doing cocaine. Like, she's got to do cocaine to do her scenes. That's just such a, like, it's such a stereotypical.
I really hope in the prequel they have Pearl doing that in the 20s and 30s.
Maybe. And then there was also the buxom blonde porn star, like not very bright type kind of character. And I was like,
pretty smart, but she
was
turned
really
out.
smart. She was really smart, but at the beginning they kind of made her seem very
ditzy,
ditzy at first, and then as it went on, you could tell that she actually had brains and everything because of what she was saying. But it still was kind of like, of course, there's going to be a blonde with big tits. Of course, there's going to be a porn star doing cocaine, and of course, there's going to be the innocent, virginal one who gets corrupted by it all.
Oh, yeah. And the big guy, black guy with the big dick.
Yeah.
I mean, I was happy.
I love that part.
That's what I mean. I'm like, there's always a black man with a big dick.
I was happy to see it because we got to see it. Like, I'm happy that there's full frontal.
When the door opens and it's just dangling down there. I'm like,
I can tell you how many times have we seen movies with breasts and like TNA, but we never get to see the guy's dong. And I'm like, finally, we get to
I've been noticing in movies lately that they are showing more dick, and it is making me very happy because I'm like,
but not erect dick. It's always flaccid, dingling dick.
Have you seen Minx yet?
I have, but I'm saying on the majority, when I'm starting to see
there's an erect penis.
Is that? I'm still haven't started it.
Kids in the Hall reboot. Kids in the Hall, which is a great Canadian, whatever. The Amazon Prime Video, they have now come together. Talk about like some elderly sex jokes. There's some great in here, but the first scene, they're both naked and not erect, and it's like you get full frontal. Thank you, Canada. But it was one of those things where I'm like, how come every time we see dudes, and I don't know if it's a censorship thing here in the United States where you can't show erect penises, but you can show flaccid penises and not get dinged for an R rating instead of whatever. So I do know that is a thing with censorship. So I can't blame the filmmakers because I'm sure they're trying for it, but
even the other guy.
It's interesting that in movies, like it's like naked women, it's nobody bats an eye, but naked men, it's like, oh no, like that's we don't see that often.
Americans also love their violence, so you can see a TV show, a cable show that's kills everyone. But the minute you show a woman's whatever, the rating goes up. So it's like, wait, what just happened? And then if you show a guy's whatever, the rating really, really goes up. Like they're afraid we're going to get corrupted or something.
I want to see it.
I even found it super funny with I think it's Martin, the actor's name, but he's a New Zealand actor, which is Maxine's partner. When he walks out in his terrible jocks.
Yes.
He
Yes.
is also, he's very, speaking of him, his character is really on point because he is the epitome of a strip club manager, suitcase pimp type, you know, has his girlfriend doing porn while he makes the money off of it type thing. And then he makes these like sexist comments about women and stuff. And I was just like, oh, that they got right. They got that really right. Because I was like,
he keeps saying, you know, yeah, you've got the star, you know, you're going to be a star.
No, it was super grooming and manipulation too, like the way that he was like, you've got the X factor, you're going to be a star, you're going to like, you know, and I was, and
we never really get an understanding of how old she is because she's run away.
Yeah. While I like that they made his character so on point for how that character would be, I also was kind of grossed out because of it. It just felt very like, it felt very much like the whole societal ideal that women have to be coerced kind of into doing porn, or women have to be coaxed or groomed into like doing it, or like, you know, talked into it, that they can't just like kind of, she seemed to want to do it on her own too, but at the same time, the way that he was like stroking her and kind of like.
But isn't that a male fantasy in itself? So that's why it's like depicted, because guys want to feel like they have that power over women or have that kind of
good point.
So it's a turn on for them. Whereas for women, I'm more turned on by women who make their own decisions sexually and who are not being groomed, but are empowered, and they do porn, or they do stripping, or they do burlesque, or they do sex work because it's on their own terms and not because they've been groomed or forced into it.
Yeah.
So to me, it's that like dynamic. It's a different way of. I'm just not turned on by grooming or that whole like.
Who is, aside from groomers?
Well, the groomers.
You know,
turned on by it.
Who do, but there was like even that scene I loved where Pearl is standing naked by the lake. And you see that silhouette of like the female body, and I felt like that was a really beautiful scene. And then you have like the bombshell walking up behind her, like, oh God, you know, but just that moonlight, and it was like it was showing that this is still a feminine. This is a feminine, you know, creature.
Yeah,
and from a and you could see it's a real butt, like, and you know, it's a real, you know, and I felt like, you know, she looked pretty good, like.
I mean, it's a beautifully shot movie. It's really well done. And I also want to make the point that the music is done by I believe it's Tyler Bates and Chelsea Wolfe, right?
It is.
And Chelsea and I follow each other on Instagram.
Chelsea is incredible.
She's a big fan of her music. She's actually in Australia right now touring.
Yes.
And I've seen her live.
I'm seeing her on Saturday. So
Yay! She's amazing. I got to see her in November. But I really love her. I really love the music for this. I thought that the music was exceptionally well done. I thought, like I said, I thought the cinematography and the videography was really well done. The editing was excellent. I do think that the dialogue could have been more inspired, because I feel like the porn dialogue was porn dialogue and it sounded like porn dialogue, but I felt like a lot of the other movies sounded like porn dialogue too.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I agree.
But I mean, it's a horror movie. You don't expect it to have these like deep, meaningful
diatribes or anything going on.
They have deep, meaningful conversations, which I thought was interesting about the industry itself. Before it got a little hypocritical when the guy was like, "Not my girlfriend," but like before that,
where he breaks down and he's crying in the shower.
I
was thinking like. Okay, so were they both virgins?
No, I think he was crying in the shower because he, as a man, doesn't know how to. Him as a character, as a male character with machismo, right? Doesn't know how to show and express his true emotions in a non-jerky way. And I think he was so frustrated internally that he wasn't able to express himself. And that's why he was crying in the shower. And that's why the scene touched me, because I'm like, oh my God.
I was like, actually like, oh, like, and I should have been like, fuck you, dude. But I was like, oh, like.
I mean, I still was dude, but I like that they made him more complex and not just a one note kind of villain, but like oh, wait, he's got some inner turmoil as well. And also, you have to remember the 1970s. The 1970s was the beginning, really, of women taking it on with like the whole like women's movement. And a lot of guys in the 70s didn't know what to do with that. I mean, they don't know what to do with it now. But I think even in the 70s, especially when you have free love and you have hippies and you have the Vietnam War ending and you have all this stuff where guys are really trying to figure out what does it mean to be a man. And so them being in this industry and him being very machismo, but then not really knowing how to express his feelings, his true feelings, without sounding like an asshole. That's what I got. I mean, maybe I'm reading way too much into that.
I think he was like a really good three-dimensional character, and that they made it, rather than him just being like, no, you can't do it. I mean, there was another element, but then he also, you know, afterwards gets the keys and goes, he can have her. You know what I mean?
I can see it from both different perspectives and through different lenses. Like what you're saying, I absolutely was touched, and at the same time, I also was like, oh, are they trying to portray it as this girl broke this guy's heart because she tried went and did porn?
I didn't even think of that.
No.
I was like the same. I was like, what are we? Is it because he's like feeling insecure and stuff? Or is it because he's like,
someone else movies like this because we have all these different.
Is he crying over the loss of control over his woman? Like, or is he,
which is a jerk move?
I mean, like, that's where I went, maybe because there was that whole thing about her being so innocent, and I thought maybe it was because he didn't get to deflower her. It was done.
I don't know. I hate that because like I don't think that's a
virginity is a social construct, man.
I don't know if that's really a thing, especially in the 70s. Like I just know that
you know, she was like the way he kept saying to her, like, when did you become such a prude? And then she would, you know, and then she says that back to him when he's like, no.
I don't know. Like for me, I don't like to be, well, clearly now I can't be, but when I was much younger, I didn't like to deflower anyone because then they treat it like a Wookiee life death. And they're like, when it's a Wookiee life death.
What?
You know what a Wookiee life debt? So that's why one after friends, just so you know, not because of sex. It's because, you know, if you save someone's life, they're indebted to you forever. A life debt. I hope you didn't think I said death.
I did, and I was like, "What? The Wookiee's dead?"
No. That's not geek slang for orgasm. I swear. It's not la petite death. It's not that. It's you know, some people when they're deflowered, they really attach themselves to whoever took their virginity to the point where it's like, oh shit, what if this was a casual thing, or what if this is a thing where I don't know if I love the person? I'm stuck with this person. So a lot of, I know as a woman, I did not like deflowering either male or female people because then they like treated me like.
Why does it sound like a bunch of old women talking about deflowering young men?
Well, I mean, I've been that girl because I was like a punk rocker girl. I was a riot girl. I was a go-go dancer. So guys, a lot of virgin guys in college and high school would gravitate towards me because they're like, oh, she's sexually active, but also she's nice. So she won't, you know what I mean? She won't judge. And so, and there were a lot of guys I had sex with, and right after they're like, oh, okay, now I know I'm gay. I didn't take it personally because I was like, well, I'm glad I could be your decisive whatever. It was just I realized it's because I wasn't very judgmental and I was also very welcoming. So I wasn't like, I wasn't super duper sexually active, but I just found that I kept having sex with people who had never had sex before. And that is not as exciting as it sounds because they don't know what they're doing.
No.
And so a lot of it is you having to teach them, which is exhausting in itself and not that exciting for me. So I think with the whole virgin aspect, I think it just depends on what you're into. But a lot of guys I know do not want to deflower anyone because of that attachment that happens, and then they can't get rid of them. And because then a lot of girls think, oh, we're going to get married now, you know, and it's just like, that's not happening. That's so not happening.
I'm interested because I know Jenna has put together 6 pages of notes, so I want to make sure that we cover off both your notes and Jenna's notes since you guys put so much effort in.
Can I just say something real quick since we started talking about music a little bit? Yeah. I really love that they used "Landslide" by Fleetwood Mac. I did
like that.
I love that song. Who doesn't love that song?
Well, if you think about it,
they actually did it well.
The song was written. She wrote it. Stevie Nicks wrote it because of her dad. dying, and so there's like there's a layer of elderly stuff, right? But then there's also a layer of rethinking your life choices, because she was also dating Lindsey Buckingham, who was horrible to her at the time, and they were in a band together at the time. And so she's dealing with that and his controlling nature. And then she's also dealing with just what do you do when you feel like your life is going off the rails? And it's a very complex, beautiful song. But I really loved how they presented it in this movie. Instead of just playing it in the background, they like have it played on the guitar, and I thought that was
really good.
Cool.
I really liked that, and she could sing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But also, I did like "Fear the Reaper" because I love that song.
Who doesn't love that song?
I mean, that scene in front of the truck was just so perfect. And when the blood splatters on the headlights of the car, I was like, yes.
Yeah,
I loved that part, and her dance in front of to the Marie song. Oh,
so that was really well done. That was really well done. I like that.
That part was cinematography magic for me.
Yeah, it was like she was like she was suddenly released, sort of, and like
because after she killed him, after she killed him, she got like almost orgasmic and euphoric from it, and it was interesting because it was kind of like she's so horny that I kind of got the feeling that like she's so horny she wants sex, but she'll also take killing instead of sex as her release. And,
that's what I thought when she was like how she straddled him while she did it.
Yeah.
It was almost like she was like having sex with a knife.
Yes.
Like straddling. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I like that. Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, sex and horror have always sort of gone hand in hand. I mean, if you look at even just the old, serial Penny Dreadfuls of Dracula, when you read that stuff, it's like, the stake was definitely, that was a sexual representation. I mean, but also like, there's a lot of sexual stuff in the most banal Victorian books that you're reading. You know what I mean? Like there's just a lot in classic horror. And then when you get to film, right, it really shows that. And I think if you're smart about it, you can be clever without being gratuitous. And I do think that this movie, yes, there were some gratuitous moments, but it is a porn within a, you know what I mean? Like I feel like they have to show some nudity, but I do like.
I think it'd be really weird if there was none.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like I think
it would be weird if they didn't show the sexual side of Pearl. And I'm glad that they showed that. I hope younger people that watch this don't just go, ew, elderly sex, because that's not, I don't think that was the whole point of this. No. Can I read a quote? Can I read a quote from Ty when he was talking about it? He said, historically, horror and pornography have always had a bit of a symbiotic relationship. Two forms of lowbrow entertainment that could be made independently outside of traditional Hollywood style system. I think that's interesting to think about too, because this is a very much not a glamorous crew that's shooting an adult film. They are very much indie level. I mean, granted, it's the 70s, so it was all kind of indie, but it wasn't like it wasn't like Playboy Enterprises was paying for this. Right?
Yeah.
They're trying to cut corners, hence the house rental, as much as they can. But at the same time, there's so many moments in this film where I'm like, that was beautifully shot. The landscape was gorgeous. I mean, there are moments when I watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre where if you didn't know it was a horror film and you just saw that landscape shot, you'd be like, oh, that's really beautiful. Like you wouldn't, I mean, you wouldn't be like, oh, they're about to get skinned alive. So it's like, it's like really good horror films can be beautifully shot, but also really, I think, are a reflection of the times they are shot in. So I think the fact that even though this is in the 70s, it's still, we are grappling with, sexuality. We are grappling with the porn industry still to this day.
Ooh, especially right now.
Especially right now. And I feel like there's always waves, ebbs and flows of when a society is more accepting, when a society is more religious and Christian based and not so accepting. And horror is very good at reflecting the times it's shot in. And I think this movie was not only, yes, a piece of the 1970s, but it was almost like a piece of now because of isolation, because of the isolation part of this. Like we all now know firsthand what it's like to be isolated because of COVID quarantine. But I grew up on a farm that was very isolated, and I grew up in a very tiny towns after that. And you don't really know that horror of isolation until you live it. And I'm not talking Shining level. I'm talking like it's just a certain level of loneliness that makes you kind of go a little crazy. And I do think that's what happened here is Pearl had such a vibrant, I mean, we're going to find out in the prequel, right? But she hinted that she led such a vibrant, interesting youth. And then all of a sudden finds herself on this farm in the middle of rural Texas, not living the life she thought she would live and being very envious and sad and jealous of the people that are on her farm right now who got to live this life that she wanted to live. So it's just, I don't know, it's a scary movie, but it's also a very sad movie, I thought.
Yeah, that it was like Jenna touched on it earlier, you know, the kind of terrifying nature, but also the sadness and the isolation and that feeling of there's an expiry date.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know whether, I haven't really spoken to a lot of male friends about this film, except for one who was like, oh, I loved it, it was amazing, you know, blah, blah. But I haven't really spoken to them on this same level about whether they picked up the same sort of things we did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As a woman watching this, you're watching it, you know, very much through like a female, and I guess all three of us in a bit of a, you know, feminist.
We're all at different ages too.
Yeah.
We're all, let me tell you something. Old lady talking. So let me tell you something. When I'm hitting, so I turn 50 next month. Shocker. So by the way, I know
you look amazing. You are amazing.
He doesn't look 50,
I'm not
I
going
swear.
into direct sunlight and drinking a lot of wine. But also, I am that girl that I thought I would never be, where I try to be like Auntie Mame kind of character, but because I don't have kids. I'm not married. The longest relationship I ever had was with my dog. Like I just don't I have commitment issues. It's a whole thing. But I will say watching this movie, and also I dye my hair different wacky colors, but I think you said something earlier, Renee, about like being around young people, especially millennials, because Hunt a Killer is all millennials. So like, I'm working with people that this is their first job ever, and this is like my 100th job. So like, I live in a different perspective, but I do feel like that meme of Steve Buscemi dressed as a high school kid going, "Hello, kids." Where he's around teenagers trying to be, because I do read a lot of YA. I write YA books, but also I watch everything on the CW. Like I watch stuff that my teenage nieces watch. So like when I go home for Christmas, we talk about the same things because we're watching the same YouTube shows and Twitch shows and whatever. But watching this, and now that I'm entering menopause, which I have personally too much information here, but I have been putting off by taking birth control pills way longer than I should be taking them. And it's not because I'm taking them because I'm sexually active. I'm taking them for the estrogen. Because the minute you hit menopause, your estrogen levels just take a nosedive. And also I have thyroid issues. It's like a whole thing. But here's the thing. I'm trying to give you hope here. So
are you on early menopause? Just as a question.
It's called perimenopause, which is
that's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
But you get all the symptoms. So here's 60 symptoms you can get from menopause. You can get all of them or none of them.
You're all getting this, guys.
I'm going to tell you a couple of them because
we really digressed right now.
No. I think you need to know this because I'm trying to give you some insight on why Pearl is what way Pearl is. You can also have double menopause, not just once, but you can have it twice. One of the things is called formication, not fornication, formication. It's that feeling you get that insects are crawling right underneath your skin.
Oh yeah.
You constantly feel like there's just bugs all over you all the time. Night sweats, which is really fun. Hot flashes, which is really fun. Like it's just a lot of stuff.
Yes. I've researched all this as I've gotten older, so I'm aware of all of this.
Your sex drive can also skyrocket at this time. So like, let's just say I've been watching a lot of adult entertainment. But also
you want to send me some movies?
I have an OnlyFans. Like I watch OnlyFans. Like I'm gonna probably subscribe to you after this, just so you know. So I hope you aren't like already stalking me. But anyway, when you're older, the older you get as a woman, your sex drive does not end. I mean, I know there's that whole myth that, I mean, maybe when you get married, it does a little bit because you're stuck with vanilla and you don't get Neapolitan anymore. But I don't believe in monogamy either. I'm like, I don't know how people stay with one person forever. But
Bonnie, I love you because you just spit it out.
I mean, I'm sorry. That's just so anyway. So when I was watching Pearl, it was hard for me not to really click in to what's going on with her, because it's not going to be that far in the distant future of I'm going to be Pearl. So like, why does she feel like this? Is it isolation? Is it because her husband has stopped having sex? Here's the thing. We don't know when he stopped having sex with her. He might have.
Yeah, which is, I'm interested to see in the prequel. When did he stop? Like,
yeah, and also if he's super religious, he may not have been into sex at all. So there might be a point where maybe there's no kids, there's no pictures of children anywhere in that house. So they didn't have kids. There's no family life that we know of. She's isolated. She may have been raised very Christian and then rebelled against that, much like Maxine. And then when she got married, she got stifled again because she got married in an era where women were expected to behave a certain way. And so she basically is she's probably got a lot of stuff cooped up in there. And also there's some hot young things on her farm having sex. How could you not want to get involved? Like, how could you not be like, oh, microphone? I wish it was more, it could have been a comedy. Like, this could have easily been a comedy. She could have been like, I'll hold the microphone. Do you need a fluffer? Do you need a fluffer? I'll be your fluffer. Like, she could have.
There are no fluffers. They don't. It doesn't exist. It's
I know. I'm trying
I love how it's such that
it exist. I'm trying to give her a job.
Like how Brittany Snow like wipes the cum off her back and then just throws the towel at the church mouse.
That could have been a job. Like, Pearl could have done that. They could have made her the cum rag girl. Like, she could have done that. Like, they could have made a job for her. Like, I feel like, I don't know, like, it wasn't their job to give her jobs, but it just, when I was watching this, I kept thinking, okay, would I go homicidal or would I just try to sneak my way into the crew? Like, I feel like I would have been more like, do you need help? Do you need some lemonade? I would be constantly giving them lemonade. Like, I would be like,
do you need anything else? Do you need anything else? Can I do anything else?
Do you need some laundry? Do you need some snacks? You guys look hungry.
I would another segue.
I've got something for you to eat, kids.
Yeah, I got some sauce.
Imagine. Another segue I wanted to mention was sorry,
go ahead.
By the way, sorry I ruined this podcast.
What? No,
Yeah,
it's great.
I totally ruined it.
I invite you.
We're like, menopause.
No, it was the boob grab. The very, you know, when she grabs his hand and she actually puts it on her boob, and it's an actual old lady boob. And they show it.
I will say during COVID, there's not been a lot of bra wearing during COVID. So I will say that my boobs are starting.
I actually found that scene kind of like tender.
Like, too.
You know, like she was like, you know, like, and then when she was like, "Tell me I'm special," and just I was just like,
I know this movie had so many different emotions in it and so many different like perspectives that you can see and stuff. Like there's like the sexism, but there's also a feminist like aspect because, you know, the church mouse also is like, no, screw you. I'm not going to listen to you, boyfriend. I'm going to do what I want to do. You know, like there's just so many different things. It's one of those films. I feel like you could just analyze it over and over again kind of. And like you said, you watch it again and you'll see stuff like, obviously I missed stuff that you guys saw and I probably saw stuff that you guys missed. And like, you know, it's just interesting. I did think because I watched it mostly from a feminist perspective and from a porn perspective. I knew that you guys wanted my porn input, so that's kind of
all your input.
That's
why porn, because I feel like we could all like talk about porn for sure. Like, trust me, if we did a porn episode, I would go down the list of my favorites and talk about one. But I want all your perspectives. We know you're more than that.
As a person who has directed and produced porn, I obviously did not direct and produce porn in the 70s. But of course, I'm watching it and I'm going, where's the paperwork?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where's the ID checking? Where are the STD tests?
Oh, they didn't do that then.
Why is there no why is there no discussion about what's okay and what's not okay beforehand?
Even when he says to Martin says to the guy when he takes him outside to tell him about, to calm him down because his girlfriend wants to get involved. And he says, oh, he's clean. Like he doesn't have any, diseases.
I mean,
He's
I
good
don't.
stuff type thing. And it's just that to me was also a little bit like, it showed that kind of old school, pornography and porn actors as simply,
Dirty.
well, dirty, yes, but also as currency almost. It was
Yeah.
just like you don't exist as a being.
But it's
You're,
also pre-AIDS.
Yeah,
So
I mean, he calls his girlfriend once at one point. He calls her, the director guy calls the main girl a thing at one point.
yeah.
And it's very like objectifying. You're turning her into, like you said, like a commodity. You're not turning her like she's not a human being. She's just a product for him at that
Well,
point.
it's almost like the modeling industry is very similar to that too.
Mm-hmm.
Like models are not called by their names. That's called still a cattle call, which I
Yeah,
find
yeah.
people call it
Weird.
a cattle call, which is reference
so
to
gross.
livestock. That is livestock auction terminology. So that's still used prevalently in the modeling industry. But I also, I don't know how much you know about porn history, but it's very varied by country. Even today, different states have different porn rules. So like some states you have California, you have to wear a condom. Other states like Florida,
You don't have to wear a condom.
You don't know.
Oh, you did last year. Did they change?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't performed in almost 11 years.
Okay.
But I do know that there's a lot. I see a lot of porn being shot because I still follow people online, and a lot of it doesn't have condoms, and I know it's shot here in California. So
Well, a lot of there's amateur porn, and then there's professional porn to look like amateur porn. So there's that. And this is like, I'm digressing, but I will say in the 70s, you are correct in believing there weren't a lot of rules or health regulations. I don't think that came into play, honestly, severely until the AIDS epidemic, when you had to be clean, because if you weren't, it would shut down the production. And even though we hate to call them commodities, they were looked at as commodities, and you don't want to kill off your racehorse.
right.
You know what I mean? So they were starting to think that way, but it wasn't necessarily for the actor's benefit. It was for the bottom line financially. Whereas now it's a little questionable what happens. It depends on, I think, either how professionally the industry company is, because sadly, there are a lot of amateur porn, not regulated, borderline questionable stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to watch stuff that's professionally made, just because the writer in me is like, I would write it this way. Also, I like shiny, beautiful porn. I don't like, was that done in a subway, not consensually porn? Like, I don't like.
I don't watch porn, so I haven't. I don't watch.
Do you watch your own? Have you watched your own, Jenna?
Yeah, have you watched any of your own?
You watch your own, like afterwards?
Because I directed and produced my own movies and I performed in them, I had to go all over the editing. I did everything on those movies, from pick the covers to write the copy on the back of the box, all the naughty descriptions. I wrote all of it. I did everything. So I would have to watch, because the movies I directed were also usually about 6 hours long.
Wow.
I put out some really good bang for your buck. Okay, my movies were double disc.
6 hours, like that's like Lord of the Rings or something.
They were double disc, usually about 4 to 6 hours, at least 6 to 9 scenes in every movie that I was doing.
But you probably also had a story.
What?
You probably also had a story where it was actually a
No,
movie.
a lot of it was just all sex or gonzo.
Okay.
But I would only shoot one scene in a day when I was directing and producing. But anyways, so I would have to watch my films all the time, and I would have to go over the editing and be like, okay, cut that shot and cut this first and add this and add the music here, and I don't want that shot there, and and I have to brighten up this shot, and I'd have to do all of that. And so once I got into porn, I couldn't really watch it anymore as much, because I know how it's shot. I start to analyze it as far as like, okay, I know that girl, I know what she's thinking. I've had sex on that couch before. Like I've had sex at that house before. Like I start dissecting it, and I can't enjoy it anymore, because I know most of the people and everything. And so I did have to watch my own when I was, going over the editing and stuff like that. And I got to tell you, that's a brutal thing to kind of have to do.
I can't imagine.
It's really hard, because you kind of have to dissociate, so that you don't become judgmental of yourself, or you don't become like self-conscious.
I know, I get it. I did stand up. I still do stand up.
Yeah.
And anytime anyone takes a YouTube video of me doing my comedy and I'm not doing improv with a bunch of people. It's me, just me and a microphone. And also, you know, I'm not skinny. So like in LA, if you're over 150 pounds, it's like you're 600 pounds. So it's like people are very horrible in the comments at YouTube videos. So I tend to not watch any of that because I don't want to know how fat people think I am or how whatever. And so I can't watch my own comedy stuff, and I've been on a ton of web series and stuff like that. I'll watch my own podcast occasionally just to make sure my attention deficit didn't ruin a podcast. Like I'll be like, I'll check.
Be bold, girl.
I hope not. Yeah. So like I feel seen. I feel safe with you guys. Hopefully I haven't talked over too many people, but
okay, we all have done it. It's a thing. It's okay.
It happens. Oh my God, can I tell you a little side story? When quarantine first happened and everyone wanted to do Zoom calls, I got on a Zoom call with like 15 people once, and I'm like, this can't ever happen again because no one was listening to each other. Everyone was, 15 little squares, everyone talking, and we were drinking. So it was just like, there was no
yelling, everybody yelling.
Chaos. So I'm just like, I think 2 people, even when I have writer rooms meetings every day for Hunt a Killer over Zoom because we're all scattered. I'm in LA. There's people in Baltimore, people in Seattle. We have some people in Israel. So it's like all over the place. So I just know that like I can't watch myself on certain things. I couldn't imagine being naked watching myself. I think I would be even more scrutinizing of that. But acting also is very emotional, but also very vulnerable. So being an actor and being that way, I'm just always impressed. I'm always impressed with the adult film industry, with people who really take it seriously and want to do new and interesting things. So kudos to you. Bravo to you for like doing stuff. So
thank you. It was a great career. I had an awesome career.
And I think also just of owning it. And I've always thought, I've always followed Jenna. I've always followed like Kimberly Kane, and quite a few others. And and I've always been, always been a fan of Jenna just in general. So that was one of the reasons.
I just, because of this, I'm just now discovering you. So I feel like I get to like learn all about what you're up to and what you've done. So
let me send you some DVDs.
Yeah, I'm a fan already, and I haven't even seen your movies yet. So no, this has been really fun. And also I couldn't imagine talking about this movie with anyone else. Like the way
no, exactly. And that's a
great group. This is great.
This is why I picked you guys.
I found something in my notes that I didn't see yet.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I just wanted to. So the beginning of the film, it's kind of like she's almost trying to convince herself a bit, and she appears more naive and more innocent. And then, because she almost throws up when she sees the cow, and she just seems more.
I mean, to be honest, that was gross.
It was gross. It was gross. But she just seems a little bit more naive and more innocent.
Look in the mirror, I think that you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Like the way she looks, and then she kind of goes, "Oh, okay, I got to do this," and then the code.
Yes, and then she, by the end of the movie, she just seems colder and jaded. She seems harder. She seems more
murdered. Does that to you?
Yes, no, absolutely. But I also felt like the movie was kind of perhaps trying to have an underlying message of what society thinks porn does to women.
Yeah, that too.
Okay.
So it's like she's super innocent in the beginning, and then by the end she's jaded, of course, after she does the porn and after everything happens. And I felt like I was getting that that, I don't know. I just felt like there was an underlying message of that, like porn makes women jaded and evil, or it ruins it takes their innocence and their, their all of that away, and I what? Go ahead.
Depends on how Christian she is, because I feel
Hold on.
You're born a sinner when you're Christian. So that's why I was like, maybe she already knew. And she's also rebelling. I mean, you don't find out that till later when you find out that Maxine has escaped her minister father, right? So that's a whole thing about how
that's almost a trope in itself, though. The
Yes.
good to do girl who runs away from home, becomes a porn
Yes,
star.
porn. Yes, it's very stereotypical. It's like,
Yeah.
see, that's
Yeah.
what I mean. Like, I have such a love-hate relationship with this movie.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm curious, how do you feel about movies like Angel and
I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay. So this is a
Let
whole
me write
thing
this down. You need to send me a list of these movies. I
a
need to
whole
watch.
list of movies where sex workers are in horror films, but they become, and not rape to revenge fantasy, because of course that is very much a genre in horror. Sometimes it's done well, sometimes it's not. But I will say the hooker gone vigilante was a huge genre in the 80s for horror films, and the movies were called Angel. I think it's Angel 1, Angel 2, Angel 3. I think there like 10 of them. And she's in high school. So it's almost like Boogie Nights in this, with Roller Girl, where she's still in high school. So it's like that. And she's to make a living because she's an orphan. She's doing so it's a whole thing. It's like she's called Angel because she looks angelic, but then she's got this, other persona of not only being a sex worker, but she's a vigilante where she goes off and kills these guys that are attacking women. So it's almost like a proto-feminist thing. Anyway, it's a whole thing. But
I have to watch it.
I know. I'll send you a list for sure. But yeah,
I put it together.
This it is interesting because I will tell you, in my work as writing, I have to write these RPG games, like these escape room in a box type of games, where you have to you get sent evidence, and then you have to figure out who the killer is based on the evidence that you're sent, like autopsy reports and police reports and all that.
I've seen those.
Yeah, so that's what I do. But when we are producing a game, and we very much produce it like a TV show, or even a screenplay, where every character has to have a journey. So even if you're a side character, you still have to have a journey that this whole thing changes you. Murder changes you. Yeah. Whether you were the killer, whether you were the victim, whether you were related somehow to the killer or to the victim, all of those people get affected by murder. So what you just described, yeah, it's interesting, that parallel of porn changes you. I think Tracy Lords did a really good interview about this in Playboy magazine once, because she started as an underage performer, and then went all the way to being really hugely famous,
and then made it famous too.
Hugely famous, but
I mean, I've never met her, but she's badass.
She's amazing. She's amazing. But I find that interesting in horror films, especially when you watch horror films where the survivors survive. How have they changed? Or if the killer survives, how's the killer changed? If the killer has changed, the killer might not have changed. But definitely the victims that have survived have changed. And I find it interesting how this character not only survived this, but also the porn industry. Even though she didn't really survive it, she was genuinely wanting to be in it. It wasn't like she was groomed or pushed into it. But she becomes stronger. But I don't know if she becomes stronger.
I think she doesn't, because you feel like she got in a relationship probably as a stripper. That's how I feel. I feel like she met that guy while she was stripping or something, and he's
I don't know if it's always a gateway drug to porn to be stripper.
It's not. Okay. And I feel like I feel like there's just that. I don't know.
There's that misconception, because I just mentioned it, but I don't know.
There's that misconception that porn ruins you, or that I think that's what I'm getting at. That's okay. Of it is that
even that scene in the lounge room, Jenna, where she's very hostile, I felt at certain points, but she's definitely, you can see that hostility when she addresses the church mouse, and she's like, what are you looking at? What, there's this real hostility towards the way she feels she's being viewed.
Interesting. I don't know. I mean,
I feel like I just honed in. I really feel like when I was watching it the second time, I really kind of tried to hone in on the things that were not correct about porn, or the stereotypical ideal of what porn is.
Yeah,
what were the top three? Mega bad.
We're all talking. I don't know what's happening.
I was just gonna say, what are some of the things that you were gonna mention?
What's your top 3, top 5, big
I said, there should not there's four scenes in one day with one guy. Plus, I don't believe that. I just don't believe that it's so hard to shoot that many scenes in one day. People do it, but it's really hard, and you have a whole crew, and it just wasn't that believable, you know? And I just feel like there were a lot of elements where it was kind of contradictory, because there was a lot of things that were empowering about the whole porn stuff in the movie, but then there were a lot of like just stereotypical societal perceptions about what porn is and the performers are, that it's a trope. It's not actual reality. Like I feel like I've become a better person since I've done porn, not a worse one.
Yeah,
you know, and I don't feel like, I mean, the whole like they're all drugged out, and there's like the suitcase pimp boyfriend, and yes, that is true to an extent, but it's not the universal experience about everyone in porn. And I think that it's a lot more nuanced than that when it comes to the experiences of porn performers. And I think that this just played on a lot of tropes and stuff, but at the same time, it was kind of supposed to, because it's that 70s horror movie. And of course it's going to play on it, which is why I feel so conflicted about it.
Here's a question for you, because these are both movies that take place in the 70s, but were filmed in modern times. When it comes to the porn industry, which one do you think is more accurate? Is it this movie or Boogie Nights?
Boogie Nights.
But Boogie Night porn, is that more financed porn as opposed to this, which is more guerrilla filmmaking?
Yes. So what they were shooting in this movie, even though there was dialogue, it was a lot more gonzo-y style.
Yeah.
Where, you know, in Boogie Nights they had, which is so weird, because I remember watching Boogie Nights when I was like a teenager, and then I get into porn, and like now I'm friends with like Nina Hartley, and she's in the movie, and like,
oh, I love Nina.
Like it's like it's just so strange to have done that. But I really loved Boogie Nights, you know. But there was also the same, you know, tropes there too. There's
a lot of drug use in Boogie Nights.
I mean, I will tell you, 1970s had a lot of drug use.
Yeah, it did.
Some people in the industry do use drugs, but some people in every industry use
not
drugs.
just drugs, alcohol. Exactly. Like alcohol. I mean, but you're right. That's every industry. But I do think it's
easier to pick apart the porn industry and say, you know, yeah, they're all drug addicts, or they've been abused, and that's why they're this, and that's why, you know, there's so many stereotypes and judgments attached.
Yeah.
And it's same thing with sex work. It's same thing with stripping. Like I have so many close friends growing up that when I was doing go-go dancing, like I lived with strippers, and you know, they're not. You always think of the trope, you know. That's why I loved the movie Flashdance, because it shows a stripper that's not like in it because she's a drug addict, or in it because she has an abusive boyfriend, or in it because of whatever. That's why I really wish Diablo Cody would make a movie of her book Candy Girl, because that is a very good. It's an autobiography that she wrote because she was a stripper before she was a stripper. Yeah. She was a stripper, yeah, and she actually goes into great detail of the breakdown of the money, how many drinks you don't make your money stripping. You make your money after you're done with your act, getting guys to buy more alcohol and then do VIP room. That's where you make your money, because you have to give more than half to the place that you're stripping at, unless it's like a co-op stripper place like they have in Portland. But there's a whole thing. So Candy Girl is actually a really good book to read about at that time. So it would have been the 90s, early aughts.
It was about 90s, I think.
But that's very different than 70s stripping, which had a totally different payout. And also you have to keep in mind a lot of strip joints at that time in the 70s were owned by organized crime. So that's like a whole other thing. And even today, that's like not all of them, but some of them are. So you have to be wary as a consumer what you're giving your money to. That's why I always investigate before I go to a strip joint of who actually owns it and what are the payout for the actual dancers. And so, but like in the 70s, you know, things were different. But like I know stripping from 90s stripping and early aughts, and I know the stereotypes. And I remember when I would have friends, or even if I was dating strippers, people would be like, oh, aren't you like worried that they're going to like, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, because I'm not dating a stripper. I'm dating this girl. Like I'm dating a person. I'm not dating this person because they're a stripper.
That's doing something.
I respect what they do. And I'm not dating them to fix them or save them or change them. I'm dating them because I love them as is. And I think that's something that's not necessarily thought of by other people. Like, I've had guy friends that are like, oh my God, I'd love to date a stripper. I'm like, no, you wouldn't, because that's how you're thinking.
They love to date a stripper for like a month or two,
Yeah.
and then it's like, I don't want you to strip anymore because my friends might see. And
Yeah.
also, what am I going to tell my parents that you do? And blah, 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 blah. And I don't want other men looking.
Tell them the damn truth, and you're going to be proud of me. Otherwise, you're not going to date me.
I was a go-go dancer for like industrial bands and rave bands. I was a rave dancer. I danced at like different venues, like the Limelight and like all these different places. And it's like, I think Limelight. Well, here's the thing. Those times were also very blurry for me, because I will say I was the stereotypical girl that took a lot of speed, because if you dance for a long time, that's a reason why I can't wear high heels.
Oh, girl.
My back is permanent. I have back problems. I have knee problems. I have foot problems. If you're a professional dancer, whether you're a stripper, burlesque, or a go-go dancer, if you do that, I was doing raves for like 8 hours a time, and I was on a lot of ephedrine and speed just to get through the day, just to get through the job. But I wasn't doing drugs to get the courage up. I wasn't like, I didn't think of myself as disgraced. I didn't think of myself as, oh my God, you know what I mean? It's not the same as sex work, or the same as the porn industry, or the same as, but when you are in a industry that predominantly everyone thinks is bad girl industry, or sinful industry, they always think, oh, how did you get the courage? Like, do you have a drug problem? Are you doing this because you don't have any?
I got it because I wanted to have sex.
I did it because I liked dancing, and I liked being on stage and dancing. Like, I liked being. Do you know how much fun it was to be a cage dancer?
Oh yeah,
until like the cages. I remember I watched across the room, one of the cages started falling, and I was like, I'm gonna die in a cage, and this is my parents don't know I'm a go-go dancer. But I will say it was fun, and I had a lot of good times, and
it's awesome.
I wasn't corrupted. No one corrupted.
No, but I can't tell you how many times people are like, what happened to you to make you do?
That's what I was going to say. What went wrong?
I was 19 years old, and I was already very sexually active and promiscuous. And I met a guy at a club who knew Peter North, and I was like, he was like,
no way.
He was like, you should do porn, and I was like, okay, because I had always been a porn fan before that. So literally the next day, I quit my job as a waitress, and I was doing porn. And it, people are always like, oh, well, did it ruin your sex life? And did it ruin how you feel about sex? And I'm like, actually, it was an incredible experience for me, because I got to explore my sexuality at a young age in my 20s in a very safe place where everyone was tested. There were people on set. I wasn't going to get beaten. I wasn't going to get raped or murdered. I wasn't going to get, an STD, hopefully, like, because everyone's tested and it's safe. And there was a lot of condom use here and there too, but I got to discover what I liked and what I didn't like. And I got to live these fantasies and stuff that most people don't ever get to live, and I loved it, and it was great, and everyone's like, well, what happened to make you retire? And I'm like, nothing happened. I just didn't want to, I just changed. I was just done. I literally won over 40 awards, and I had, produced and directed, and I had been in the industry for 10 years performing. And I was just kind of like, I'm done. But I still get people are like, oh, something bad must have happened to you to make you do porn.
Oh God. And can I tell you, I started go-go dancing the same time Dita Von Teese started doing burlesque. We would cross paths. Because I used to do Betty Page lookalike contests in my 20s, and we would both cross paths constantly. And she is still doing burlesque. She's close to my age, and she is doing burlesque still. And a lot of those like really legendary burlesque dancers dance all the way into their 50s and 60s. Like, they are really good at what they do. But yeah, I just got so tired of people asking me what happened to me, why I did this. I'm like, because I like it, because I like dancing, and I don't want to do stripping because I don't like how demanding it is. I just didn't like how it wasn't because I didn't like stripping. It's just because it was too demanding. Whereas go-go dancing, I got to pick and choose what I was doing. I got to go on tour with bands. Like, it's just different.
And that's the beauty of sex work, is there's something for everyone. Like, I have friends who are full service in-person escort sex workers, and that's nothing I've ever done. I've only done stuff on film, and I have friends who do the full service sex work, in person, and they're like, how could you do it on film? And I'm like, And it's just
How do you do it in person? Yeah.
and that's the beauty of sex work, is there's something for everyone. Like it's, whatever works for you, do it, and you don't have to do more than what works for you. But it's so funny because like when I got into porn, a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, why are you doing porn? Why are you doing porn? Like you're too pretty to do porn, or you shouldn't do porn. It's gonna ruin your life, or all this stuff. You know, you're never gonna be able to like whatever. People are always gonna see you as a porn star, that kind of thing." And then when I retired, everyone was like, "But why did you retire?" And I'm like,
You can't win.
You can't win. But you know what? You've got a bachelor, you're going on to like do your master's, and then you're going to keep on and get a PhD. And
a
you
different
can
life. But I'm also going to integrate my previous career into it. So, you know, my knowledge and my experience.
How could you not? I mean, I think that's a perfect connection, a perfect combo, because it's like it needs to happen. But also, I don't know, like I find
experience is something that's missing from a lot of like, you know, parts of that area, whether it be, you know, whether it's academic, whether it's like actually practicing as a psychologist or a counselor or whatever it might be. The lived experience part is something that a lot of those people in that industry don't have. And you know, I think that, you know, people who are looking for help in any way, you know, when you want to speak to someone about something and then you find out that they've been through something similar, it makes people open up. It makes people listen. It brings things out that are harder to get out when you feel like you're being judged by somebody who doesn't understand where you've been. You know what I mean? So I think it's an amazing thing to have someone
I agree
going into that industry who actually has some lived experience, you know, and that's why I do a lot
long path, but I'm doing it.
That's why I do a lot of mental health work, is because, you know, I suffer from mental health. So I do it because I want people to know that, you know what, like I suffer from, you know, these disorders, but I have a perfectly good life.
Yes.
I do all these things. I do all this stuff. I'm always doing things.
Your disorder does not define you. Me doing porn does not define me either, you know?
Yeah, and anything that's, like, it's just
we're not talking about the movie anymore.
No,
we
are
are
coming back.
We are. I wonder though, if you were there on set, would you have been able to stop the murders with your psychology know-how? Like, would you be able to give Pearl the support she needs so she wouldn't just kill everyone that won't have sex with her? Like, were you? Like, how would you intervene?
Need some sort of medication and a vibrator.
That's another thing. I'm like, well, it's the 70s, so I don't know how. And it's also rural.
I was thinking she just needs one of those clit suckers and she's all good.
Here's the thing: there's no internet yet. There's no Bluetooth.
I know. There's none of that.
There's no hands-free anything yet. There's no.
Yeah, I know.
If you go to San Francisco, there's the Museum of Vibrators, which is one of my favorite museums because it goes all the way back to the 1800s when
runs a plug into the wall and all of that.
They were I don't know if you've watched. Did you watch what's Fern Mysteries? Do you know what I'm talking about? The murder mystery show with Miss Fern. She's Australian.
No, I think you mentioned it before, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, it takes place in the 1920s, 1930s, but there's an episode where she goes to one of these wellness clinics. It's like a wellness retreat, but it's for women who have hysteria, which is just women being women, right? Yeah. And so the guy that runs it has invented a vibrator, but they don't call it a vibrator. They call it something else. And she is like, oh, this is a sex toy. And they're like, no, it's vibrations to make you feel better, to get over depression. And she's like, it's a sex toy. Like, it's so funny. But that's how vibrators started in these places to help with mental illness, when it was just really women that were sexually frustrated. And they didn't, and also it was before that, you know, it was 1920s when women were starting to get more sexually, like, publicly okay with that.
Women would go to doctors and doctors would like stimulate them and send them home.
That's funny. When you mentioned earlier when people like wouldn't ruin their sex life, I always think, wouldn't being a gynecologist ruin your sex life more than being because then you see every illness that could possibly, I mean, I don't know. Like, I just assume, like, that's the one thing I draw the line on with horror is I don't like illness horror. I don't like horror where there's like,
The only movie that scares me are movies like Contagion, which is why
Yes.
the COVID thing fucked me up so
Can
bad.
I tell you when I found out when the news broke about monkeypox? Do you know how many monkeypox horror films are in production right now? There's 3.
Yeah, yeah.
There are 3 monkeypox movies that are going to happen. Yeah. I don't like any
You
Contagion.
know what?
What was
It's
the
like-
one? Was it Cabin by the Lake or something?
Those
There's-
actually
Yeah.
give me nightmares. Those give me nightmares. That
There's
kind of
one where a girl is shaving her legs and her skin's coming off while she's doing it. I'm like, no, I can't.
No,
do,
no,
I
no,
will
no.
watch I don't do animal torture, and I
Yeah.
don't do skin diseases. Those are where I draw the line. Everything else
I'm
I
with
don't
you.
care about.
I'm with you on that. Like
Everything else. So I'm glad in this movie we don't see the cow get hit.
No.
Right?
We just see the aftermath.
the
Yeah.
Wow.
I will say though,
I'm a vegetarian vegan.
right?
I was just like, whoa, that's a really full on.
It's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre reference because there's
It is, yeah.
You see roadkill as
But you also did you see that line? See it, hear it. Here's the line where he says, husband, boyfriend says to Maxine, something along the lines of, "That'll be the last time you'll ever see the slaughterhouse again."
What? I didn't
Yeah.
even watch
I didn't
that.
hear that.
Yeah.
Did
In
she
the
work in the
van.
slaughterhouse?
Yeah, he must have, or the family or owned one or something. But he says something like that along those
I
lines.
lasted 1 day doing
Yeah.
a summer job at a
He goes,
slaughterhouse.
does the
One
vom
day.
thing. He comes over and he goes, "Well, at least that's the last time you'll ever see a
I
slaughterhouse."
was like the
I
smell of the
really-
slaughterhouse.
I really, really want to know what I want to know the prequel now, and now I want to
Yeah,
know
I know.
the whole story.
I know. Well, this is the thing. I was like, okay, so there's a prequel, and the prequel is going to be all that Pearl, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is going to be amazing.
Played by Mia. Mia's
goes-
playing her.
Well,
Mia's
I
playing
He is playing her, yeah.
I hope that on the sequel, that if she does continue and goes out to the porn, I hope that they consult people in the industry. I really
When
do.
they do the
So,
sequel, yeah.
This takes
They haven't filmed
Let's
it.
write
Maybe,
him a letter. Let's say, hey,
Yeah,
Yeah.
write him a letter. Write to
Yeah.
a letter.
I mean,
I'll find it. I'll find his
Donna, you
address.
have the power. I think you can write. You can get in touch with Ty West and say
You should be
he
the
hasn't
consultant.
started filming. He hasn't started filming the sequel.
Yeah,
and
they
be like,
haven't started
"Maybe
filming the
this is
sequel.
tweeters."
So you should be the consultant. But here's the cool thing: if this movie takes place in 1979, that means the sequel will be 80s porn, which is totally different than 70s porn. And there's a lot of money thrown at 80s porn. So you could that's gonna be. I'm interested to see if they make her like a fabulous porn star that has like a bunch of, you know what I mean? Like not.
yeah, or if they make her like the mess of a porn star.
A mess. Yeah, that's kind of the.
I guess it depends on what they want to do with her character. But here's the thing: she's already going to be kind of fucked up because she had to kill someone and she was almost killed. So that's.
I reckon it's going to be one of those like we follow her, but then we're going to have like flashbacks.
I mean, you can be a stronger person from being a
Yeah.
final girl, but your PTSD is strong.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I was about to say the girl needs some therapy now.
Maybe that's where you come in. Maybe they'll write you a character and you could be her therapist.
Oh, I would love to do that. I've always had the dream of being in horror movies, and I've only been in one. And I
What
want to.
horror movie? What
I
movie?
was in a movie.
Let's put a petition together to get you into
Yes.
the sequel
Yes,
as one of the actors.
I'd love to do it. It's
Like,
always been
what were you in?
I was in a movie by the Butcher Brothers called Raised by Wolves.
Oh my god, I've seen that. How did I not recognize you? I'm
At the
so
beginning- At the
sorry.
beginning of it, I played Susie Whitefeather. I'm the escaped girl from the cult at the beginning who's talking to the police, and I'm all
Oh my god, I
covered in
totally
blood.
know. Oh my god. Sorry, I'm fangirling
And
even
so
more.
it's such an amazing experience. And
Oh
like
wow.
they made it look like I had carved like symbols, satanic symbols on my body and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
I was drenched in fake blood, and I had to be in it all day. And then they asked me before when I got at the end of the scene, we were done shooting, and they were like, "Do you want to rinse off?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm going home like this." I was like,
I was in I was a go-go dancer for like a band I will not name because I don't want to support them anymore or give them any more whatever. But we were called the Manson Girls. And
Yeah, I
so
know
we
what you're
were like 3 girls that were dressed like them. I think you know who I'm talking about.
we all know who you're talking about.
So we were called the Manson Girls, and we would get fake blood dumped on us at the end for like a big thing at the end. And then I said, okay, I will do this as long as it's not pig's blood.
Yeah, of
because
course.
fake blood is a lot cheaper than synthetic blood, but it's also very dangerous. As a go-go dancer, you will rip up your legs and your feet
Yeah.
like crazy.
Yep.
You do not want pig's blood in your
No,
cuts because then you
no.
get trichinosis, and it's really hard to get rid of. So I was like, and then they dumped pig's blood on us at one point. I'm like, I'm out, I'm gone, I quit.
No, I loved having all the fake blood on me. I drove home and I was so praying. And it was the only time in my life I was like, please let me get pulled over. Please let me get pulled over. Just because I want to see this police officer's reaction. Like, so I purposely stopped and got gas just so that some people would see me covered in blood to see if nobody reacted. This is Los Angeles. Nobody cared.
No one cares. But I will tell you,
gas station,
I dressed in a a prom replica dress from Carrie. So I went to my prom dressed in the same dress that Carrie had in the movie Carrie. And then I went to a Guar concert right after prom. And Guar is really well known.
I know Guar.
They do
dumping things on the crowd. So if you're in the first 2 rows, you're going to get slime dumped on you, fake blood. And so they saw me, totally saw that it was a Carrie dress, and purposely brought me on stage to dump fake blood on me. It was the first time I ever got on stage and fake blood, and I was hooked.
Nice.
That's when I was like, how can I be a go-go dancer for Guar? Do you guys need a go-go dancer? I'll be a go-go dancer.
So yeah, I love
that.
I feel like this is
doing
like
the horror thing. I love being covered in blood. I want to do it again. If anyone sees this and they want to put me in a scary flick, please. Because
I will tell you something kind of it's something a little weird, but like I'm a recovering goth, though technically I guess I'm still goth.
So am I.
There is an
People
Etsy
kind of
store.
are.
There's an Etsy store that sells bath bombs that make it look like
that are like blood. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, when I got home,
Strawberries.
I got home and I did not want to wash it off. I took so many pictures because I was like, this is so cool. And then I went upstairs and I was like, I guess I have to take it off.
I will send you guys a video that I did recently. I did a show called Geek DIY, which was I guess it was called. It was a craft show for Stan Lee when he was still alive. He had me do a craft show for him. And I'm on, I bring celebrities who don't like to craft on my show. So it was kind of like an Amy Sedaris kind of at home with Sedaris kind of vibe to it. But I did a fake blood tutorial with Javi Grillo Marsh, who's a pretty well-known director. He did Dark Crystal and some other stuff, Dark Crystal reboot and some other things. Middleman, he's great. So anyway, at the end, he dumps fake blood on me. Let me tell you, the video is hilarious. The picture stills I have on my IMDb, which makes it even look really more grotesque than it was. But it was the funnest thing to do that I was like, I want every movie I do to have some sort of fake blood element on it, because now I just want fake blood thrown at me, because it's just so much fun. It's so much fun to be covered in fake blood.
My thing as well. I'm like, I want to be in a scary movie once.
I want to be in a bunch.
Okay, I'm gonna write one. How about this?
Yeah, I want to be in loads, but like obviously at least once in my life, I want to be able to say.
This? I'm in the middle right now of writing 2 horror books. Why don't I just write you guys in as characters and then just make it a screenplay, and then we're done. Then we're done.
No, I've actually thought about like directing and producing.
Oh yeah, you totally should.
Which would be super freaking awesome. I need a good script. I'm not a script writer. I don't write fiction, so I wouldn't even know where to start.
I will gladly take a look. I know Renee will take a look. We'll be
Let's
make
a movie. Let's do it.
I think this has been like an amazing femme fest right here of love, and
I have new friends now.
I know, it's so much fun. Thanks for including me, and thanks for putting up with my story times.
Oh, of course. But I guess we should
wrap it up.
Come back, and like, what I guess let's kind of go through. I guess what each of us, what our kind of final thoughts and on the film. So,
should we give them a rating?
If you want, I'm also giving a rating.
I've never done anything like this before, so.
We normally, I don't know. I normally don't give a rating because I feel like.
By the way,
I feel like oh my god, dog.
Marlo is totally doing it.
Totally do. We can do a rating out of 5. I reckon is a reasonable go. But Jenna,
ratings. I was just being silly because I was
no,
like,
I always find it really weird when people were like,
"We're because Siskel and Ebert."
I believe like someone's review if I think they're rad and like I get their vibe. But if I like see someone who's like some old man, he's gonna give this movie like 1 out of 5, right? So it's like, if someone cool that you like or you get vibe with is giving it a good review, it's probably good.
Like Joe Bob Briggs. Joe Bob Briggs does reviews of
Yeah, and his are usually good.
B horror films.
Yeah. Okay.
You go first. You go first, Renee.
Or me?
Or Jenna, either one.
Jenna, you can go first. And
I want to go. Okay. Overall, I definitely think it's a movie that should be seen. It's entertaining. It's got a lot of different things to kind of dissect. It's got a lot of different elements. There was a couple funny parts. There was, creepy parts. There was gory parts. There was sexy parts. There's a little bit of kind of everything. I did think, like I said, there's a love-hate relationship that I have with it. But I don't know if that actually makes me like it even more because there were things I didn't like. I don't know. But I definitely enjoyed it. It should definitely be seen. I would give it a solid 4, maybe a 3.75
out of 5.
Out of 5, yeah, out of 5, not out of 10. If it was out of 10, I'd give it like a 7.
Yeah,
maybe
out of 5 is so much easier.
I don't know. I think you're right. Putting a number on it is kind of hard.
It is.
It's like, but no, it's a beautifully shot movie. I am very excited to see the prequel and the sequel and see where all the gaps in the storyline and all the questions that we have are answered.
Yeah. And all the little nuggets that I think all 3 of us have pointed out, new ones that we didn't know.
Yeah, go back and look at the mural on the side of the burlesque building.
Well, before the other ones come out, I'll rewatch it again. And of course, I'm sure I'm going to catch things that you ladies have brought up, and I'll be like, oh yeah. So
yeah. Bonnie?
I love. Okay, so I shouldn't say love it because I'm such a weirdo. I have so many. Okay, as far as a slasher homage made now about the 70s, I give it a 4 out of 5. Overall in horror genres, all of them put together, I would give it a 3 out of 5, only because I'm a little nervous about making elderly people going through elderly things scary, because I think we're all, unless we all jump off the Midsummer cliff at age 40, we're all going to be Pearl at some point. So it's just a matter of how we deal with this. So for me, and also because I'm getting older, I'm starting to pay attention more to older characters in horror films.
Yeah, no, I feel you.
So to me, it's more, if she at least got to have sex once, I would have been happy. She should have at least gotten off at once.
She did. She had sex with her husband.
No, he stopped it. Remember, he stopped it midway.
I thought he came.
Did he?
No, he came.
Oh, okay, fine. Why did I block that out?
Oh, it was the most vanilla sex scene. It was missionary, and it was just
missionary.
Oh, that's why I blocked it out. I blocked it out because it was boring sex. I blocked it out.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
It was missionary, and it was just like
it was not 50 Shades of 80-year-olds or whatever.
Yeah.
So, where's that movie? Where's 50 Shades of Elderly? Anyway. Yeah, okay, I blocked that out. No, I like this movie a lot. Here's the thing, though. I really like this director and screenwriter. I love the people, the cast and crew that were involved. I think it's hard to have a bad movie when you have so many talented people involved. So, and it was beautifully shot. So I guess, overall, a 4 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I give it. And so does Marlo.
She's happy.
He's like having a moment. I don't know if you could tell. Like, let's do a little close up of like
loving
belly rub.
Look how happy she is right now. She's like, speaking of getting attention,
rub the belly.
Here, I just do belly rub while you. All right, what do you think? What's your film assessment as I get belly rubs?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. For me, I obviously. I actually agree with both of you on the points of it's a 4 out of 5 for me. The reason, there's so many points I think that we've discussed, the reasons behind it, but I loved the way it was shot, like especially at the beginning, going with the 70s vibe. But I also love the transition into the dark, creepy side that happens later. Yes, there was a lot of tropes, and I have that same thing as Jenna where it's like love, hate. But that goes with horror just as much as the porn stuff. So, there's like sometimes I want to sit down and I just want to watch a horror where I know that the girl's going to go exactly up there when she's been told not to. And, but for me, I think it was a fun little adventure film. And I think, I like the way that Ty West was trying to bring something else into what was essentially a tribute movie and trying to bring that in. And I just love the whole idea behind, as frightening as it is, of the age and bringing in Pearl and the idea that, coming from like just purely a feminist like point of view, I just really felt everything to do with Pearl, and that idea of, like I said, becoming invisible and unwanted and something that we don't talk about. And I think, it was a weird dichotomy bringing it into a horror film, but I also think that worked. I'm really looking forward to seeing prequel and understanding Pearl's journey of how she made her way to where she eventually did, and how that all ends up. But I think the characters were amazing. Like Pearl was amazing, which is obviously Mia Goth, but Maxine, Mia Goth, amazing, and I think that I had no idea who Kid Cutie was before this film. Like, there's age for you. And so
You had no idea what?
who Kid Cutie was. I knew he's some kind of musician, but I wouldn't know who it was if you told me. And so and I actually thought he was good as an actor. So
no, he's been in quite a few things actually. He's a really good crossover musician.
I didn't even know that was him, ladies. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Really?
Yeah,
that's cute. So I was like, and Jenny Ortega. I've
love
really
her.
become obsessed with her. And
Just a great name. Her name's great.
Scream and also the new Scream, but also the Babysitter.
Yes,
Babysitter movie too.
And she's got some cool stuff coming out, I think, as well.
Oh no, we're gonna see a lot of her for sure. But also, shout out to Brittany Snow because she's one of my favorite Scream queens, and I'm really glad that she was in this.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was just a really good, a good amalgamation of characters, and I also really like the actor who plays the filmmaker. He's been in a lot of really weird little indie films, and I've always thought he was quite cool. And
you also have Martin Henderson, who was in The Ring, and he's in this.
Yeah.
So that was nice to see him doing more horror as well. So
well, he's New Zealander, and so my housemate's New Zealander, and she was like, "It's my," and I was like, "What?" I'm like, he kind of looks like the dude from True Blood, but no. It's not him, but they look very similar. So but I think overall, I think it was like I said, a really good film, and I think everyone should see it, and with an open mind as well, and see it knowing that you're going to see things that might make you uncomfortable, but you're also going to see things that are tropes and things. But overall, I think it's just a fun ride.
I will recommend one other horror film that does explore age in a really lonely way, and that is The Hunger with Catherine Deneuve and David Bowie and Susan Sarandon. It was made in the 80s, and it's one of the greatest love stories, but also movies of what happens when you're an immortal vampire that suddenly starts aging drastically. Like when you were beautiful and young and now you're not. And I find that very compelling because they do show the elderliness and what happens when you become elderly and all that. So I think that's a genre that I might start exploring more thanks to this podcast. Because
you've got a passion for it.
Well, I didn't know how much I cared about it, but also maybe now that I'm writing more screenplays and writing more horror novels, I might explore age more, especially coming from the feminine side and coming from sexuality side and what does that mean? But also not make it be that evil old lady in the woods is out to kill everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Some romance. Like maybe it's not about murdering everybody, but I do like that duality of sex and death and the idea.
Well, I think that's that's what I kind of liked about it as well, was that she's put sexually, she's on fire really, and she's pushed to the brink. of
If she was
madness.
in an old folks home, she would have been
Right.
so happy. She would have just gotten so much sex in an old folks home. Like it's just, she just, unfortunately, she's with a very prudish husband in the middle of nowhere. But if she was a widow in an old folks home,
Yeah.
that woman would be like, it would be Emmanuel 86. Like that would be.
And I think my final thing is how great was it that he had a heart attack? Just because the bird
I feel like
jumped
you
out of
just
him.
read my mind. I thought he was gonna have. I'm surprised he didn't have a heart attack during sex.
Me
Well,
too.
I was like, come on, he's just gonna.
Well, that's why
Then
he
he
was
just
saying
walks
that.
in the door and has a heart attack because the girl's there. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, well, you got one shot in.
I mean, at least he,
Got
yeah,
out
at
with
least he
the
got laid.
brain.
At least he got laid once. Yeah, but he was saying that all throughout the movie. That's why she was so sexually frustrated. They hadn't had sex in so long. Not
Yeah,
because he
which I
didn't
guess
want
we'll
to.
find
It's
out
because he had a
exactly how
heart
long
condition.
that is.
Yeah. He didn't have any
Okay,
beta
so-
blockers. Yeah. So
Yeah. And it's that, I mean, yeah, it sounds like she was a beautiful dancer and then somehow met him when he was in the army and then has been brought home to the farm and had to give up her life. That's what it kind of seemed like.
well, they do say he was both in World War I and II. So my guess is this is going to be Roaring 20s, and I bet you she was a flapper,
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
which will be
Yeah.
great because that'll be like
That'll
sexual.
be so cool. Yeah, that'll be really cool to see how he does that and how he portrays all of that.
And then it'll be cool to see
Mm.
Mia Goth again in a different role, but also we're going to see her in the sequel, which I guess is the third movie,
Yeah.
whatever that ends up being. But I'm excited for this, but I am really going to push hard. I'm going to see. I know a lot of horror film directors. I bet you I am 1 degree away from Ty West. I'm going to see if
We need to get Jenna in the
that's what I
sequel.
mean. That's what I'm hinting at. I'm going to try to see if I can like get his email or something and say, hey, if you need a consultant, who is also a very
A
good
consultant and also an actress to
and also
play
an
a
actress, but
character
also
in
a horror expert, but also knows his shit. I know someone.
Yeah, like I said, shout out to anybody who's a horror director or casting person or anything like that. Put me in the movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, I'd love to get murdered and I'd love to be the murderer and I'd love to it just sounds like such a fun acting experience. You know?
What's
Yeah,
interesting
totally.
too? There is
I've always thought if I
genre-
was going to be an actor, horror's the way to go.
well, there is a
Horror
whole-
and comedy. That's
There
for
are
sure.
so many horror films that have used that have featured ex porn stars or current porn stars. There's a lot of adult film entertainment actors and actresses that also are in a lot of horror films. So I feel like this crossover can happen.
It'll be the 80s and you'll be sick.
That's when I was
You'll be
born.
like, yeah.
We'll make it
You're
happen.
like,
If we don't get you in a Ty West film, I'll just write a film and put you.
It's a deal, ladies. It's a
Okay,
deal.
cool. Yay!
Well,
Thank you so
I
much
just
for
want
having
to
me.
obviously say a huge thank you to Jenna for taking the time to come on and Bonnie for taking the time to come on. I know it was a little delayed, but you know, COVID, sickness, blah.
Worth
But we're
it.
here, we made it.
Worth
And
it.
I'm super excited that this was the first of many episodes to come.
Yay.
And yeah, I reckon and hope so that the three of us can reconvene on a few more.
Yeah, I'm telling you, if you do
Sounds
one
like-
on men,
I'm
I'm
definitely
there.
going to do one on men. So
I'm there. You got me for that if you want
Yeah.
me for that.
yeah,
And also, like, I have my handle. That's my at Bonnie Girl is what I am on Twitter and Instagram. So if anyone watching this has questions about any of the other movies I mentioned, or wants recommendation on elderly sex films. That was a bad thing to say. But anyway, you know, like I've got plenty of horror recommendations of elder people that are elderly that are depicted pretty interestingly and not just tropey. But yeah, I'm always available for horror discussions. I think that's the best part of social media is talking about movies you love. So I'm all down for that.
Yep. And anybody who's watching who does not already follow me, you can follow me at twitter.com/Jenna Hayes and Instagram.com/Jenna Hayes, Facebook.com/The Real Jenna Hayes, and JennaHayes.com, GenXstudios.com, Fleshlight.com/Jenna Hayes, and OnlyFans.com/Jenna Hayes.
which we're all going to go and join after this.
I'm gonna go finish watching. I'm watching that show, the show Candy, right now on Hulu.
Oh,
I
it's so
do
good.
love
It's so
I'm
good.
watching
Good. Mhm.
I'm on the second episode, so I am going to.
But it's based on a true story. So after you're done watching it, you could then watch the actual trial.
Yes, I know. My sister's a big true crime buff, and she's just like, "Oh, I already know what happens, but I'm not going to tell you." And I'm
Oh,
like,
it's
"Okay."
good. So good. So
Thank
good.
you so much
Well,
again for
thank
having me.
you so much, and hopefully I'll see both of you again soon.
Yes.
And thank you everybody for watching. I would shout out every single thing that I've got, but I know the people who follow me know all of the things. But at the moment, the only thing I will plug is my new book, Wounds Volume 2, with the foreword by the lovely Mark Lanigan, is available to order if you go to reneeruin.bigcartel.com. So please go and do that. And I'm also excited to sort of secretly announce that it's going to be in a really, really cool bookstore in the city in Melbourne, sitting right next to Mark Lanigan's book. So I'm pretty excited that our pals will be pals sitting next to each other. So, and you know, it'll be an amazing thing. And wish he was here to see the complete one, but it's still a great, a really great thing. And I'm really proud of it. And you know, he loved it and was really proud of it. So that makes me happy.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you so
congrats.
much. And yeah, and that's us for this evening. And now I'm sure we're all going to go watch something nerdy each.
Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for tuning in.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.